welcome to this Monday edition of the Tip Off, the show that sets the stage for the most important news, daily fantasy plays, and bets on tonight's 8-game NBA slate. I am your host, Kayla Knierim. Joining me today, we have Eric Lindquist and Chris Spags. We had some jazzy music coming in. Eric was feeling it. Guys, how we doing?
Better now that I saw Eric dancing around to the point that his camera was shaking. He's got all the energy that I don't have after drinking my face off all weekend and going out to the first brunch I've gone to in probably about a year. And so I need all the energy that Eric has. So I'm excited to be on the show with our pal, Eric Lindquist.
Let me hand it over to you. You can have some. I'll shoot it through the screen. We're ready to rock. It's good to have the band back together. I'm so happy. I'm trying to bring it. Kayla, I'm so sorry about your grandpa. It is nice to have you back on a show and just giving you all the virtual love that we can here. So YouTube chat, you better be nice today.
Thank you, Eric. That means a lot. And yeah, I will be off the show Thursday and Friday. My grandpa passed away, so dealing with that. But we are here today to talk the NBA slate. Eric, also, you're repping your Puma shirt today. Big win, not for Ricky Fowler, but for JT over the weekend. You're a huge golf fan. You bet JT, so congratulations on that.
I did. Yeah, I had my first PGA show today with a couple of the guys, with Jeff and with Jason. So it was nice to get a couple reps in there. I'll be on with Ben Rasa tomorrow. So excited to talk some PGA. That's kind of where I come from the betting markets, and kind of obviously played golf my entire life, played at Iowa State in college, and good to kind of like get back to my roots a little bit.
We got to get the diversity up with the golf show. So I think getting Eric on there really going to brighten things up. More white guys in golf. That's what I say.
Very important. Yes, obviously. It's an untapped market for sure. Nowhere to go with this.
All right. Don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for countless hours of content on the NBA, NHL, PGA, MMA, NASCAR, and every other sport that's in season. It's going to be a rowdy Monday. I can feel it. All right, you guys, let's talk about our sponsor, No House Advantage, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across the NBA, MLB, NFL, and PGA for cash prizes. This exclusively peer-to-peer fantasy sports platform levels the playing field and makes it easier for you to win real cash compared with your traditional DFS sites. The best part is you can join for free today. Just download the No House Advantage app today and use promo code Awesemo to receive a first match deposit bonus of up to $20. Be your friends, not the house. Win big with player props today. And to celebrate the NBA's second half, we have a special deal for all first-time users of Awesemo Plus. Get 50% off an Awesemo Plus weekly pass when you use promo code Shamrock at checkout. That's $15 for full Awesemo Plus access to all DFS sports, including NBA, PGA, NHL, NASCAR, MMA, soccer, esports, and our new March Madness DFS package. This offer is for first-time users only and is, of course, valid through March 17th. Stop guessing, start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today. We're going to kick things off with bad beats. We've had a few days off of the tip-off, but basketball never stops on the Awesemo YouTube channel. So I want to know how you guys did over the weekend. Eric, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I can't complain about too much. I guess anytime you get JT at 20-1 or a little bit better, I got 22-1 on him. Was able to kind of have that pay for my entire weekend of DFS, which was not so great for DraftKings FanDuel for NBA. Felt like yesterday was a good show, kind of got a lot right, but kind of played some sketchier value than I probably needed to. Thomas Satoransky went off, and I was lower on him just because I didn't really know how that Chicago front court and backcourt minutes would shake out. Kobe White did get a little bit more run even than I expected him to there. That whole Chicago situation, that'll be something to track going forward. I expect Satoransky's price to go up. We'll see if Kobe's comes down, and we might be able to get some lower owned shots on some of those guys on a team that is trying to figure itself out right now.
And I feel like my Saturday was really strong. Obviously, yesterday didn't do any shows. So when I'm not doing shows and I'm kind of having to do some social responsibilities going out into the world and trying to not sabotage my relationship by just staying inside all the time, I felt like yesterday was not the best for me, especially with Rudy Gobert putting up 28 rebounds. Hard to foresee that when putting in a few half-ass lineups, waking up at 11 a.m. But I feel like for the rest of the weekend, though, Saturday did a show with Rinpack, our pal Ryan, who Eric does a Slate Starter podcast with. And as Eric had attacked test. You do a show with Ryan, things go well. So had a nice Saturday. I know Awesemo was breaking that down in the game plan video, which all the Awesemo Plus members can check out to see some of the moves that top players made to try to account for a weird Saturday where we didn't know if Nikola Jokic is going to be playing. But I feel good for today. I feel like there's not a lot of injury news right now, which kind of makes things a little bit dicey going into the live before lock shows and the deeper dive where something's going to hit, it's going to break everything. But for right now, Kayla, I think we're good to go and positive momentum being carried today.
Love it. I feel like you have a lot more stories to tell us from your weekend, but maybe we'll get to those.
Oh, nothing that would get me in a lot of trouble with people in the
This
house.
is a professional live stream that we have going here, Kayla. We can't put him under fire like that. Oh, Spags, do tell me, what'd you do this weekend? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Well, Eric, it's safe to talk to Eric, obviously, on this camera because he's so friendly.
This
and
is safe space.
So
yeah, this is great. I extract all the good stories.
Nothing
I
too
just
bad. I
stare
just
you
haven't
down.
had a full-on bender day in a while where it started early and then carried throughout the day. And then maybe sometimes when couples are out in public going to brunch for the first time, maybe you get in a little bit of a fight that ends up being awkward. And then the rest of the day is spent with one person passive aggressively watching the Grammys at too high of a volume in the other room. I don't know, maybe just talking spitballing here theoretically, but it's all
Kayla,
fun.
you were onto something here. There's an untapped story that exists in this situation we need. For those that don't know, LA has been shut down forever for over, it has been like almost exactly a year. We've had like little snippets where we've been able to go do stuff, but like everything's starting to get going here a little bit. So good for you for getting out in the world. I wish I could do more of it.
I knew there was something more there. I'm very intuitive and I just felt like
it just feels weird, I think, being back out there and, and having to go through it where, even, talking to your significant other who you spend every minute of the day with at home is different than being out and there's no TV around. You're not looking at your phones as much, or ideally you're not looking at your phones as much. So it's a different wrinkle there that I feel like psychologically different, in a way that I wasn't expecting, not even the interpersonal part, but just being out and then being like, oh, like we're kind of close to these people. And also like it's outdoor, but still sort of indoor too. And, the mental hurdles, I think we're all going to have to overcome over the next couple weeks and months, unless you're just going out there getting wild all year long, in which case more power to you. Hopefully you've been safe.
All right. That brings us to key news.
Mm-hmm. It's key news in my life.
Seamless transition. Yeah. Seamless there.
Let's get to it. Elfrid Payton is doubtful while Derrick Rose remains out for the Knicks due to health protocols for their game against crosstown rival Brooklyn. Is it an Emmanuel Quickley or Julius Randle night against the high-scoring Nets, Spags?
It looks like ownership-wise, it's going to be an Emmanuel Quickley night with everybody wanting to go there. And I don't ever really have an issue going to Quickley. I guess he does have a sore groin, which can happen for a young star player whose top shots market value is just soaring by the day. So who knows what Quickley's doing out there, but expected to play today with no Payton. I think that's been a spot historically where Quickley's looked good. Had over 30 fantasy points yesterday. I feel like really no issue to me in playing Quickley. Randle, though, at his price point, I have some concern about him getting there, and it does seem like an ideal spot. Maybe it is one of those pay up to be contrarian situations on a projection basis. I don't know that Randle's getting there with Osmo's projections or what I'm seeing from mine either. I think Quickley's the one that's going to look good and probably you won't kill you either way, whether he has the tournament upside, whether there's some other point guard, shooting guard combinations out there that get more points. You never know in a GPP. But I feel like Quickley, Eric, seems pretty safe to me. I really don't have any issue going him at high volume.
Same over here. I also like going to Julius Randle. I have really no problem with either of them. Randle right now, 27.9% usage rate on the year, 26.9% for Quickley. Julius Randle's first on the team in DraftKings points per minute, 1.28, as opposed to Quickley, who's at 1.08. The thing that you're getting with Quickley is just a huge minutes boost. He goes from 19 minutes per game. Just got done playing 33 here with both Rose and with Payton out of the lineup. I know that Austin Rivers, who hasn't been in the rotation here for a while, it was actually nice to see that he was getting ruled out as well, just because you never know with Thibodeau. If he has somebody at his disposal, he might be using them. Frank Ntilikina is going to continue to be the de facto starter, but this is a Nets team. They're sixth worst in the NBA with 113.2 defensive rating. Kyrie and James Harden do not play defense on opposing point guards, giving up the 21st most in the entire NBA points to the point guard position. Excuse me, they're the ninth most to the point guard position, 21st worst. So I'm excited to get to as much Quickley as possible because he's just a guy who in any extended run of 24 minutes plus continues to smash prices.
All right. Karis LeVert joined the Pacers after he had surgery to remove a mass on his kidneys and immediately played just shy of 30 minutes in his debut. Eric, how does his return affect the Pacers tonight against Denver?
Well, we're going to have to wait on one piece of news. And I know it doesn't seem like it matters that much, but Jeremy Lamb is questionable. That's like 15 minutes that kind of exists out in the ether somewhere. And so if he were to end up being able to give it a go, I think Karis LeVert does kind of cap out at that 26-minute spot. On DraftKings, it's not really a conversation. I don't think anybody's looking to jam him in at 7K. We kind of want to see him in this offense a little bit more. We have a 1-game sample size to go off of, but seeing him play 26, 27 minutes, like that's a great start. That's a big heads up on probably the best story in the NBA this year. Basically had a trade that saved his life. At 4,100 on FanDuel, that's going to be where everybody's looking to jam him in. So that's going to be a big conversation point coming in. I'm going to be much higher on him because I don't think that ownership's going to change one way or another, whether or not Jeremy Lamb is ruled in. If he's ruled in, I think I'll be under the field. If he's not, if he ends up being ruled out again, I'll probably go over top of the field on FanDuel.
I think Karis LeVert looks great tonight on FanDuel. As Eric mentioned, the price on DraftKings, I don't know how you get there unless you're trying to be incredibly contrarian in a way where you're just straight up ignoring projections and the fact that he's going to be around about a 3.5x value on the DraftKings salary. But on FanDuel right now, it looks like he'll be one of the top owned plays at 4,100 on there. And I get it. I think that spot, I played him over the weekend. He actually, before the news on FanDuel, I've been playing a little more FanDuel recently because the results have been there recently. Everybody who plays FanDuel for the most part knows that sometimes things work out a little bit differently or better there, even if you have the same data for there and DraftKings. And I feel like LeVert on FanDuel, hard to avoid today if there isn't another value play that opens up. He had a 28% usage rate in that court time he had, which I think gives me more cause for concern for the other Pacers. I know Sabonis had a monster day because he had, I think, a triple-double in that game, including 10 assists, but his usage rate was down under 20%. And I feel like having a guy in LeVert in there, you're looking at a better version of Victor Oladipo, one who's going to fit into the offense more, I think, instead of just trying to get his and, adding a little more defense on the other side for Oladipo. But I think with LeVert, it's just another mouth to feed there, and one that's not a Justin Holiday, not a Goga Batazzi, not a guy who's going to come in and Edward Sumner and not shoot. It's a guy who's going to dominate the ball whenever he's in there and put up shots, whether they be assisted or him creating his own shots. So I think there's a lot to watch here for the Pacers. I think right now LeVert would be the only one I feel confident playing, and then only there I'd feel confident playing him only on FanDuel.
I love that take, especially because you're looking at 43 minutes, which is the main reason Sabonis got there as well. That was kind of a crazy amount of load for him to take over there. But he only saw a 19% usage rate. That's kind of the concerning part for me. So I'm right there with you where I think Sabonis, we're going to see that price come down a little bit as time goes on here, as Karis LeVert adjusts to getting into this offense, as he adjusts to this team. You're going to see it affect the value of Doug McDermott, all these other pieces. But for today with LeVert, it revolves around Lamb for me, which is a strange thing to say. Sabonis you can get to on FanDuel because you are playing two power forwards and it matters more for raw points. But on DraftKings, I'm going to find it almost impossible to get to him.
Serge Ibaka is questionable after he left yesterday's Clippers game due to an injury. Spags, does anyone materially benefit from the Clippers tonight against Dallas? If I can read.
So we probably will see a little bit more of Vika Zubac, though yesterday in that spot that Kayla just mentioned, he didn't get a ton of run there, and I think ended up yielding more minutes to really anybody in that Clippers rotation, though the game didn't get out of hand there, so maybe that is part of the reason too. And I feel like Zubac is the one you look to right away. The issue that I have is in this spot against Dallas, I don't really know that you need to have a big man out there. Maybe you want more small guard lineups. Maybe you want more Lou and Reggie together, and then Kawhi, Paul George, and then a Marcus Morris type could be in the mix. I think there's some reason for concern. I think Zubac has nice upside here because he's going to be able to dominate against whatever center they put out there for Dallas aside. But overall, I just have concerns that you might not need him out there. And as a result, you might not see Zubac just get secure run. And if people are treating him like he's a very safe play as a borderline value on DraftKings, especially, I just don't know that you want to be there as heavy as the field is, just because as the Clippers do, there's a lot of ways rotationally that they can get away with just not playing a center at all.
I respectfully disagree with you. He's Kristaps Porzingis is 7'3" on the other end. 7'3". You're not going to put Markieff Morris, as much as like Kristaps is somebody that we know can go out and hit down, like knock down a jumper. Kristaps Porzingis is 7'3". They're going to need Zubac's body to match up with him. Serge Ibaka would have been the only other option for him there. I mean, going through the rest of this lineup, yeah, they could go small, try to get Kristaps to go out and guard Markieff on the perimeter or something, but it just comes down to like a matchup situation. There's nobody else on the Clippers that I'm looking at that could really possibly go out there. They're not going to put Patterson out there. They're not going to put Kimbangeli. They're not going to put any of these other dudes in a situation up against Porzingis. So as long as Porzingis is on the floor, you're pretty much going to have to match him up with Zubac. Otherwise, he's going to eat him alive in the post, eat Morris in the post. I find it very, very difficult to believe that Zubac isn't coming off of a blowout where he only played 13 minutes. They limited him in the entire second half. He did start the second half. Then it got out of hand. Then they took him off the floor. I think Zubac would have gotten to 24, 26 minutes in that spot. And so Zubac is like one of the guys that I'm really kind of keyed in on this slate.
I just would push back a little because I don't think Porzingis is the same guy if we're talking about a 2-year sample size compared to this year. Like the reason you want a big man out there is not to chase Porzingis out, around the 3-point line, which he's going to put up about 6.5 3-pointers a game. He's also rebounding at a single-digit rate per year, or this year rather, which is down a lot compared to the 15% rebound rate that he had going back to last season. So I think you're not going to be penalized as much by not going big against Porzingis. Like the reason you go big is to keep him off the glass, to keep him from doing that interior damage. That's not Porzingis' game. And I think a Morris has been not great since returning from whatever injuries he had, or I don't even know what's going on with him. Honestly, he's just looked bad for the most part recently, but he is a guy who historically has been a gritty, occasionally dirty player, including against Luka Doncic last year. So going against Porzingis, I just feel like that's a matchup where, you're going with a grizzled veteran against Porzingis, a guy who's been soft, maybe injured still this year, and not rebounding, not attacking the glass the way he used to, not blocking shots the way he used to. Like, I think Porzingis is big, yeah, but he's big in a way that's kind of soft now compared to the past where he's that storied unicorn, a guy who can go inside and do a lot of damage in addition to stretching it out. I think now he's just a stretch forward, nothing else.
So going through the box score too, I'm looking at a couple of these. Obviously, the Golden State game, they absolutely murdered them. He only played 16 minutes. I think there was a tiny bit, not a changing of the guard by any means, but the Clippers have given Zubac extended run as of late when he's been playing well. If you look at Washington, they matched up him against Mo Wagner. I'm not saying Mo Wagner is by any means Kristaps Porzingis, but it's a center who likes to sit out on the 3-point line. Serge Ibaka only played 18 minutes in a close game as opposed to 29 that went to Zubac. So it's kind of a similar comp, and that was 3 games ago. So you're looking at Washington, 2-point game. They ended up losing by 2 in a close game there, where, we had the whole late scratch situation with Paul George. Zubac played very, very admirably, 33.75 DraftKings points, ended up getting the extended run. Golden State, I'm throwing that game out the window because it was a blowout. New Orleans, throwing that game out the window, it's a blowout. So that's 2 games of 16 and 13 minutes that I don't really care that much about. We saw 29 minutes. He was the preferred option trying to close out that game over Ibaka. I don't know. Something tells me that he might get a little bit more run than you're thinking.
I think not. I think that's fair. And I think at the end of the day, we're going to see what Awesemo's minutes projections look like right now. Serge Ibaka still in to account for the fact that he could play today. And I think, if it ends up being that Ibaka yields the majority of those minutes to Zubac, like Zubac right now at 19 to me projects as about a point per minute guy, same as he's been all year long. But if he does get projected as 25 points, I think, or 25 minutes, he's going to be about 25 fantasy points. I think he's getting there more. Just the issue for me is Zubac is at minimum salary. So right now, I think you have to squint your eyes to see where he's going to be if you want him a lot. And if Ibaka gets ruled out and we see a lot more minutes from Awesemo going to Zubac, then I'll feel more comfortable. But I don't know. I think your points are pretty sound too. And I think this is one where hopefully the tiebreaker for everybody out there will be Awesemo, because that's having a tiebreaker is the best player in the world. Probably not the worst thing.
Yeah, it's not the worst.
Wow. Good stuff from you both there. All right. San Antonio will remain without DeMar DeRozan and the soon to be moved LaMarcus Aldridge in a winnable but slow-paced game versus Detroit. Eric, has anyone stood out to you so far for this depleted Spurs roster that got blown out by Philadelphia yesterday?
So Keldon Johnson is going to be the highest owned player on the slate, which terrifies the crap out of me right now. Over on DraftKings, 28.7%, coming in with the most on our last run of ownership. He has had 5 consecutive games where he hasn't eclipsed 20 DraftKings fantasy points, 5 times basically being way, way under his 5K price tag that he sits at now. I'm a little uncomfortable with that. Obviously, if you're just looking at it from a box score perspective, this is also going to be a slower paced game up against Detroit. However, Detroit has been yielding quite a few fantasy points to the small forward, power forward position. So maybe just looking at it from that perspective, but you take DeMar DeRozan off the court, sure. But you're also getting back Derek White. You got back who else? Rudy Gay got back. Devin Vassell got back. There's so many other guys that exist in this rotation. They're coming off a blowout yesterday. I don't know about this ownership number. It's a little bit sketchy to me. I'm going to be curious. I mean, right now we've got him in for 26.75 minutes. That sounds about right. I don't know if at 5K on DraftKings, I'm super comfortable going there. I might take some shots going to him over on FanDuel because, again, you have to play two small forwards. You're going to get a little bit lower ownership compared to where he's at over there. He's right now at 21.2%. So maybe I'll take some shots on FanDuel and maybe be right at the field there. But God, that 5K number on DraftKings feels like something that he just hasn't been playing as well as he was earlier. Maybe that changes. Maybe this is just one game sample and I'm overthinking it, but he has been so bad that I'm going to find it tough to get to that number right now.
Yeah, the run's just been mostly insecure for Keldon Johnson in a way that I don't think you'd expect, where Rudy Gay has been taking some of his minutes away. Keldon's also been not the most effective in court time out there, where if you look at the rate data, he's been a better rebounder without Aldridge, a better, gets more shots up as you'd expect to without Aldridge in there. And he hasn't shown that on the court at all. And I think he's kind of running into a couple things where Eric mentioned that you should have a lot of guys to feed, a lot of mouths to feed, which is always a problem in DFS. But also DeJounte Murray's been pushing up his usage the last two games, over 30% usage for him, which is higher than where he's been, where over the historical sample, going back to even last year, if you go back to last year without DeRozan and without Aldridge, he's a 23.5% usage guy. This year was a 24% usage guy. Both numbers really in line with where he is. But if we're going to see Murray push more shots up, and he's sharing pretty much every minute that Keldon Johnson's on the court, and also if you have Derek White in there, who's a rest candidate, so maybe if he gets ruled out, things change materially for the better without him in there, that Keldon can get a little more looks. But I feel like overall Murray, kind of taking possessions away could be something that hurts Keldon. Derek White being out there taking more possessions away, being another dominant ball handler, that could take possessions away. I feel like there might be something with the longer term sample with Keldon that's not quite working the same way, where these guys are good, trying to get theirs night in and night out now. And if they're trying to get theirs, they're not setting up Keldon to get his. And I think it could be a big detriment to him because he's not a guy who can really create his own shot right now.
Okay, Russell Westbrook had a huge game on Saturday versus Milwaukee. With Bradley Beal unable to go with a knee injury, they'll have Beal back tonight for another game against the Bucks. Spags, do you either Beal or Westbrook appeal to you tonight?
I don't think so. And I went heavy on Westbrook the other night on Saturday because the rates for him are amazing without Beal on the floor. 38% usage, 55% assist rate. And he showed every bit of that as he put up 80 fantasy points in that game against Milwaukee, a spot that you wouldn't think Russell Westbrook would have the most success because, they allow a lot of 3-pointers. Russ tried to shoot 3-pointers and it worked at the beginning of the game and then kind of went away from him. But I think in this spot, it's the same issue I always have with Washington, where these guys can be outliers in tournaments. If you're getting a little bit of them, that's fine. But really the bigger opportunity is when one of them is ruled out. When we had Westbrook rest days earlier, Beal looked great. When Beal's been out this one time recently with a knee injury, Westbrook looked great. I just think they're priced right now for spots that are kind of prepared for that contingency, that if you have one guy out, the other guy's going to look a lot better. And on a night-to-night basis, I just don't get to Westbrook or Beal enough. And it wouldn't shock me if one of them has an outlier day because you have to keep up with Milwaukee. But I just don't feel confident, Eric, that either one is really going to have the opportunity that I want to be heavy on either.
I think just because of the ownership that exists, so you can make this argument for just about anybody when they're going to be sitting underneath 10% who has the ceiling that Russell Westbrook has, that has the level of Bradley Beal's ceiling. Both of them coming in under 10% on DraftKings. No problem taking some shots on them there in this spot. Obviously, one of the things like from a macro level on this entire slate is those two early games are both like the two highest totals on this entire slate. So I generally like to wait on my lineups a little bit, but if I'm going to get under 10% ownership on either one of those guys, I'm happy to take some shots. I don't really have an issue. We've seen ceilings exist where they coincide. This isn't a bad matchup by any means. Obviously, it's a very good basketball team, but the pace of this game's kind of up for both of them in this spot. Like this isn't New York on the other side of them. This isn't like Utah, where, well, actually Utah would be fine now. That's kind of a predisposed like idea for me now. But like for the most part, Milwaukee is going to be a fine matchup for them in terms of pace for this game. So I have no problem taking some shots there, but that's an argument you can make for anybody with those kind of ceilings.
All right.
That's all I had. Yeah, okay, I have nothing else. That's literally my only take. Hey, ownership, Russell Westbrook's under 6%. Maybe play him in that spot.
All right, and that is our key news. Let's head over to our one-on-one in these battles between stars. Which player would you rather have in NBA DFS or prop bets tonight? We've got first up, Nikola Jokic is one of the highest price plays on the slate with a very secure role. Tonight he faces Domantas Sabonis, who had one of his better games this last time out, despite Karis LeVert taking a ton of possessions away. Eric, who do you want in this one-on-one?
I think just based on my earlier comments, it's pretty easy to see where I'm going with this. This is definitely a Nikola Jokic situation for me. Nikola Jokic kind of controlling the ball in every single way, shape, and form. Look at Jamal Murray's production on the other side of him, just completely depleted offensively in so many different ways because of how good Nikola Jokic has been. Domantas Sabonis, we saw that usage drop to 19% in the first game back with Karis LeVert. Again, they play different positions on FanDuel, so that's not really a conversation there. But on DraftKings, where you're paying kind of a premium for either one of them, it's Jokic, and it's not particularly close for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's got to be Jokic here because Jokic is priced for what his role is, what he's doing. Sabonis, I think that game that Eric mentioned that we talked about earlier, that's going to keep Sabonis's price higher than I think it probably should be. Where it's me, I think he should be probably down on DraftKings to high 8K, maybe 9K flat. And that, that accounts for the floor that he has every game, as well as the ceiling games he's going to have, where he's going to have more assist upside because a guy like LeVert can actually shoot, can get a shot, he can get credit for assists of LeVert driving to the basket. Like that's something that's going to help him out on that end. But the usage is really a concern. He's been about 28% use rate guy with no TJ Warren and no Victor Oladipo. And now you're basically throwing in one of TJ Warren or Victor Oladipo in Karis LeVert, maybe a better version, maybe a better fit amongst the team itself. But I think really in a one-on-one spot like this, you want to take the guy who's priced for what he's doing night in and night out. And Jokic, I don't think, projects fantastically today relative to the salary. I think you could probably make an argument for some other guys in that range. Luka, you could go up a little bit higher to Giannis, go up higher to Harden. I get all that. But Jokic, to me, just priced for what he is Nikola Jokic, whereas Sabonis is priced for a Pacers team that's going to look drastically different here. Even if LeVert does keep around, 25 minutes a game, that's still a very productive 25 minutes. It's going to make everybody else less productive around him.
Okay, Spags, going right back to you. Kawhi Leonard is at one of his cheapest price points of the year with Serge Ibaka possibly out tonight. He'll face Luka Doncic tonight with the Mavs, a 1-point underdog at home. Which star would you rather have in this one-on-one, Kawhi or Luka?
I think the ceiling for Luka certainly feels higher on a given night, but to me, I think with relative to the salaries and all that on DraftKings, where you are going to get Kawhi Leonard different positions today because they are now Luka's just a straight point guard, Kawhi just a small forward, so you're just choosing where you spend your money relative to the overall roster construction. But I think Kawhi, to me, just screams too cheap. And I think if Ibaka's out too, you are talking a few more possessions being opened up. You're also probably talking a few more offensive rebounds from Zubac that and maybe he'll put him up, and maybe that just creates another possession for Kawhi himself. I think there's a lot of things that could benefit Kawhi here at about more than $1,000 more to go to Luka. I feel like they probably have a similar outcome tonight. And I think to me, I feel confident enough going to Kawhi, even though I know the back-to-back may scare people off. And that to me is sort of baked into the price too, where people are afraid of the back-to-back. They're only going to be playing him 10%. If they're going to play Luka more, I'd rather have Kawhi save the money and hopefully get different somewhere else.
You, sir, are sharp. I absolutely love Luka Doncic all the time. There's no question that there's a ceiling there. But look at the other point guard options that exist as well. Like we're looking at Emmanuel Quickley, who I love today, Derek White, DeJounte Murray, both of the Spurs guys. I like going to them. Delon Wright even is somebody that I like. James Harden, I like his ceiling even a little bit more, which is crazy to say because obviously this is a terrible matchup. So I'm kind of preferring to go other routes at a point guard position where, yes, you're only locked in on DraftKings at playing them at three specific spots. You are playing them at your point guard spot, your guard spot, or your utility spot. With Kawhi Leonard, obviously you're locked into just the small forward position, but Keldon Johnson, I'm a little iffy on. LeBron James is going to be popular, I think rightfully so. Alec Burks is kind of another hairy piece of value. Mikal Bridges, like there's so many other random pieces that just don't look nearly as good. Not to ever really like drop a bunch of value grades in, but I just kind of like caught my eye that other than LeBron sitting up there up top, who I think is going to garner the most ownership other than maybe Keldon Johnson, which I think would be a mistake if you were to end up in more lineups than the 28.7% for me. But the next guy who's got an A is Kawhi Leonard sitting down there at 10.5% right now on DraftKings. I'd be happier to get on top of that. Go elsewhere at point guard where there are other routes that can be optimal that are either guys who are at a cheaper price point or James Harden, who would give me a little bit different lineup construction than most. So I'm happy to go that direct route with Kawhi as well.
All right. Steph Curry shot the Warriors into an upset win over Utah yesterday. Tonight, he faces LeBron coming off 2 days of rest following one of his worst fantasy games of the year, Friday versus Indiana. Eric, which megastar do you want more tonight, Steph or LeBron?
Well, that depends. Did Steph go out for his birthday with you last night? Is that why? Did you guys have some fun before he came down? It was his birthday yesterday, so he had a nice birthday narrative. As much as Rudy Gobert tried to keep them in that, Steph Curry was out of his mind, did Steph Curry things. I think today, though, I got to side on the side of LeBron James. Kyle Kuzma has actually been playing some fantastic basketball of late. we watch a lot of those games out here in LA just because it's what you put on at night. And it seems like Kyle Kuzma is starting to look a little bit more assertive in a way that he hasn't in a while. I'm actually expecting LeBron James to actually to help his production here going forward. I know it hasn't looked great for him in the box score as of late, but I'm still looking at LeBron being the only guy that I really, really trust on this entire basketball team. He's going to have to go out and win him some games here. Him and Draymond are going to go John back and forth with different stuff. I really like going to LeBron tonight. Again, you can play him at point guard or small forward on DraftKings. On FanDuel, you can play him at small forward. You could pay up for him and Kawhi. There are options up there, even though traditionally you're trying to punt on FanDuel at that position. I just really like LeBron. Steph Curry, again, he's just at a jam-packed price point up there in that 10K range on DraftKings. So many point guards with ceilings. I'd prefer to go the LeBron route.
I think LeBron on the projection basis is going to look a lot better, and that's why he's going to be owned by about a fifth of the field right now on DraftKings, and comparable numbers on FanDuel as well. So I think that, on paper, LeBron is like the better play. The one thing that just gives me some cause for concern about, LeBron is that I don't know what was going on with him on that Friday game. And Friday was such a weird slate where that was a Michael Porter night where Kevin Porter. Sorry. I don't mean to get Kayla excited here by saying Michael Porter. The good Porter Jr.
Buzzword.
The good Porter Jr.
Take a drink.
Yeah, was a good play on Friday. He and Kenyon Martin Jr. were value plays that opened up all the top salaried guys. And then all the top salaried guys had bad days. You had the Embiid injury. You had all that other stuff that went on. Like, I think that to me was a very disappointing spot to see LeBron do absolutely nothing. And, granted, on the other side, I think is really interesting to note, Indiana's guards went off. Malcolm Brogdon had one of the best games he had. And maybe that was his farewell to usage game where he knows that Karis LeVert was going to play the next day. Who knows? Sometimes basketball players have those things. But it did jump out to me that this Lakers team right now defensively did absolutely nothing to stop Malcolm Brogdon in that game, made him look like the best he's ever looked, probably better than he looked to get paid by Indiana in the first place. And I think that could open up some opportunity for Steph to back-to-back sucks. I think LeBron having 2 days off, probably a positive thing for him to get his mind right after a dud game coming out of the All-Star break. But I think Curry, 5% ownership for him on DraftKings. I'm willing to take that stab, even though I don't like the price. I just think there could be something with Curry here and the Lakers just being such a worse defense. I know, Eric, you've talked in the past, our pal Greg Ehrenberg likes to always point out people forget that the defense gets worse too when these guys are out. And no Gasol, no Anthony Davis, this Lakers defense, I think has just been appreciably getting worse. So that's a lot of things going against them.
So two big points to piggyback on top of. Alex Caruso, I got borderline concussed in that game, didn't return. He banged his head on the floor. He's the best point guard defender. He's a phenomenal defender, actually. Texas A&M looked phenomenal in college, came into the pros. That's kind of what got him in the position that he's at. He only played 7 minutes. Malcolm Brogdon did all of his work with Alex Caruso off the floor. So if Alex Caruso is out again tonight, he's questionable right now. Yeah, fire him up. But if Alex Caruso can give it a go, he might Steph Curry can win in any matchup, but I would have a little bit of pushback. Alex Caruso is a defender that matters. He's somebody that I do try to factor in. He's somebody who we saw in the bubble. There were multiple times where they just put him up against the best player on the other side, and he would just make it work. He's a gritty dude, somebody that I really just like as a basketball player more so than a DFS player, and I always try to distinguish the two. But watching that entire game, they were just completely inept. Schroeder can't guard Malcolm Brogdon, a much bigger body, and I'm telling you, Alex Caruso is a piece of news that won't matter from a DFS perspective for the Lakers, but absolutely matters for the other side guarding Steph.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair point too, that just a guy who's going to fight through screens. Schroeder's not that guy. Caruso is that guy. Fred VanVleet historically has been that guy. I think, it's something where we talk a lot about how, defense for the most part in your process shouldn't matter. But when you are trying to, justify getting some exposure to a guy who's just completely unknown and is, somebody who has a ceiling of Steph Curry that we just saw, a day ago against a much better defense, or a defense that's looking a lot better currently in Utah. I think there is opportunity for Steph here. So LeBron's a play you probably are going to have more of in lineups, but I think making sure that you get that taste of Steph Curry because he's got the opportunity, I think really could be worthwhile tonight. So I just wouldn't fade it entirely, especially as a late night hammer. Everybody loves a late night hammer.
Yeah, Kayla, sorry to be going back and forth. This is kind of an important talking point because LeBron is a good spend up option, and it's an important spot in order to get right because there is a lot of fantasy value that could exist there. Draymond Green coming off of a triple double, a guy that I'm very, very high on for tonight. Basically for LeBron, I've never seen him in a game that entire second half. He was kind of defaulting to Kuzma, either like as a confidence thing or whatever. Like LeBron wasn't really going one-on-one in many spots. He was driving and kicking. Kuzma was hitting corner threes, looked good on the perimeter. That's now 2 games in a row that Kuzma looks great. So rather than just having these flash in the pan games, again, this is where it gets a little borderline because I don't want to overthink it from like a true basketball perspective. I do want to dig into the data and into the numbers, but I'm going to say flat out, like LeBron has never like played second fiddle to Kuzma in his entire life until that game in general in the second half, because he's like, this is my young guy. We've got him paid. He needs to be our number 3. And he kind of built up a little bit of confidence in him because he was knocking down shots.
There we go.
We also got a super chat here, which I just feel like we have to hit because it's from one of our marketing guys who's now having our boy News God send in super chats on his behalf. But they want me to wish a happy birthday to Jabari Parker. So the most sincere happy birthday to Jabari Parker for, I don't know, are we getting bits done on us now on a show by our pal Joey? I don't know what's going on, but if they're paying money, I guess anybody, you can pay me any money here. I'll say whatever you want, unless it has an epithet in it.
Mm-hmm. Chicago Mormon basketball legend Jabari Parker. Put some respect on that.
There's so many. It's hard to pick just one guy, but it's got to be Jabari.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, a couple of thoughts from things you said before this. Steph Curry's birthday yesterday. Mm-hmm. I'm the same age as Steph Curry, and there's nothing more depressing. Also, Kevin Durant's my same age, and Adele. Like, what am I doing with my life?
Speaking of the Grammys, because we are all LA folk, and that's like our Super Bowl, and a lot of times. I didn't know who Dua Lipa, what is her name? She's the most beautiful girl I've probably ever seen in my entire life, though. Dua Lipa, is that correct? Renpak was trying to explain this to me the other day, and he's like, I can't believe you don't know who this is. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, she looks cute or whatever. Legs for Days. That was fantastic. That was probably one of the best Grammy performances I've ever seen in my entire life. And then you have Taylor Swift, like in a house. That was kind of weird, but you know, that's your girl. That's your girl, isn't it? Taylor Swift. Got it.
It is. I actually did not watch 1 second of the Grammys, to be honest.
Oh, you missed a viral Taylor Swift gif of her responding to Beyonce like an awkward little turtle that she usually is. And then there was also Meg Thee Stallion's performance I was forced to watch because booty for days on that Meg Thee Stallion. And she was proud to show it off. And I definitely felt like a very risque performance for the Grammys too. I'm not like some old guy who's like, oh, they shouldn't be showing that. But I was like, this is CBS. These people are like normally tuning in to see NCIS and it's Meg Thee Stallion there just showing what she ate for lunch earlier in the day. I felt it was like a bold move for the Grammys, but yeah, good for her. Good. Congrats on the win.
I did see a lot about her on Twitter. She also was on the like New Year's Rockin' Eve that I was watching with my parents, and my mom was so disgusted. But neither here nor there.
You have to support her. You have to give her your Yas Queens and go on. But I was like, wow, this is a lot of ass for CBS. That's just all it is.
Next on 60 Minutes. Yeah, it's just not the normal segues after.
We've had terrible transitions this show. Just too many.
Terrible or awesome? I'm going to vote awesome. I'm more than okay with this. We're getting the nod from Jordan. We're doing good things here. We're doing God's work.
That we are. Okay, which brings us to, if you're not able to watch your favorite Awesemo shows on YouTube, almost all of our Awesemo YouTube shows are available through the Awesemo Podcast Network. We've got a podcast for every sport, and we're available on every major platform. So head on over to awesemo.com/podcast to check out the latest. Just leave a 5-star review on one of our podcasts with your Twitter handle or email address, and you'll be eligible to win a free week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. One winner will be rewarded every Friday, and reviews will be eligible to win for up to 1 year. Best of luck. We're now going to head over to our No House Advantage prop or not. Here are some of No House Advantage's props of the day for key players. So guys, I want to know if you like the over or under on them. We're going to start with Kawhi Leonard, who sits at over under 4.5 assists. Eric, what are you taking here?
This is going to be an over for me in a couple of different ways. I'm pretty sure. Again, this is one of those things where I feel very strange because I kind of was doing a couple of other things beforehand. And I'm like, I hope the things that I say match up with the projections. But in general, Kawhi Leonard coming off of that blowout, probably going to be a spot where I want to kind of be invested in just about every single facet on Kawhi Leonard. It's going to be a very, very close call in so many different ways, but you know that it was going to be close. But I love that Spags is like throwing these ones that are true 50-50 numbers out here to kind of see where we value ourselves at. Because that one definitely caught me by surprise, because generally it's going to be on one extreme or the other. But I'm going to slightly lean on the over for Kawhi.
Yeah, we got to embrace our aspiring ESPN nature here so we can debate things. So yeah, I've been choosing a few more 50-50 propositions here. And of course, you can always get the No House Advantage projections on the Awesemo.com projections page. So make sure to check that out too. But yeah, this is a true 50-50 according to Awesemo. I have Kawhi also projected for 4.6 assists today. So I would skew over slightly, but I think this is one where if Serge Ibaka does end up out, I feel a little more confident in Kawhi getting there. And, it sucks to lose a guy in Ibaka who is, a shot maker guy, could hit mid-rangers, could hit threes sometimes. I think that does bode well for the assists. But Kawhi in the situation, no Beverly, he's out of the mix. Reggie Jackson generally is going to yield a lot of possessions to these guys. I feel like the situation bodes well for Kawhi to hit the over here. So these 50-50 props in No House Advantage are sometimes ones that people will just completely overlook. And I think if you're putting him in as a 1 or 2 pointer on there, one of the lower options in your lineup that you're building, I think this is one that I would take the over on just because I think there's opportunity for Kawhi, the bounce back of having this kind of disappointing blowout situation yesterday for him. I feel like today going back out there, I feel like him getting the over on assists, especially if Ibaka's out, setting up some Zubac layups, like there's a lot of ways for him to get there. So I would take the over.
Okay, Spags, right back to you. Kristaps Porzingis over under 20.5 points.
So this is going to fit the narrative that we had earlier, but I'm under on Porzingis today, and Awesemo skewing slightly under as well, a 50.3% chance of hitting the under compared to a 49.69. A fun number there, nice number for the over for him. But I would say for the under is really where I want to go. I just am not a Porzingis believer this year. I think there are reasons why there are rumors about the Mavericks trying to trade him to the Warriors, maybe a few other teams out there. Wouldn't shock me if he got shopped around a little bit more in these last few days before the trade deadline. And I think really Porzingis just not a guy I'm most inspired by here. I think the Clippers do enough things defensively to make it hard on a guy like Porzingis. So I'm not going to buy in here, even though that shutdown Ivica Zubac defense could be right around the corner. I think I'm going to have a lot less Porzingis than the field will pretty much any night, but I think especially tonight against the Clippers.
Shots fired, man. Ivica Zubac. Who would have thought that this would be the point of contention? The wedge between you and I.
The start of our rivalry, really. It all comes down to
Ivica Zubac is actually my favorite NBA player, period, because the best night I've ever had on DraftKings is because of purely him. He went for an absolute ceiling game when he was with the Lakers and won me some money that was very, very nice. So I have a special place. I believe Zubac will be the name of my first dog. So that in my defense a little bit too, I'm biased. That being said, yes, I'm right there with you. I think kind of shorting Porzingis in a lot of spots. I think it's also a team defense thing that we got to be factoring in. The Clippers in general can contain a guy like that, can actually game plan for him. You can give him looks. You can switch on picks. You have Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, who, if you want to get in pick and rolls with them, have at. Good luck, Porzingis, for a lot of that. Yeah, you can elevate over top of him, but Kawhi is somebody that you don't want switching on any picks onto somebody, especially like one of your scorers like Porzingis. So I'm right there with you. I'm happy to short him just about everywhere.
Okay, Eric, the birthday boy. Steph Curry over under 35.5 points plus assist. What do you like here?
The birthday boy plus 1 day. I think this comes down to what I was saying before too. Individual defense is something I try not to get in the habit of factoring in too much, but Alex Caruso can play some D. He's a guy who's a high energy dude who does all the dirty work for the Lakers. If he gives it a go, sounds great to me. We'll see kind of how he's feeling pregame here, see if he ends up giving it a go. Again, yeah, Brogdon looked like an absolute All-American stud the other night up against the Lakers, but all of that had to do with Caruso being out, kind of their best individual defender. So keeping an eye on that news. I'd be happy to go over if he's going to be out. I'm happy to go under if he's not.
This is one projection wise too that Awesemo has a 60% chance, of going under on this one. And I feel like that does seem a little bit high, but I also would have Steph as having just 32 and change points plus assists today. So on paper, I think I would go the under, but if I'm going to go, I guess if I'm playing a no house advantage and I'm planning on playing Steph on DraftKings and FanDuel today, then maybe I'll take the under here. But I do like the idea of trying to target this Lakers defense being a little bit weaker, especially as Eric mentioned, as if Alex Caruso is out tonight, that maybe a minor thing, but still could be the difference on an over-under prop bet that he just gets a little bit more here in terms of his points especially, but the assists could come up too. I think that's a spot I don't mind going away from the projections here. If it's your 1 pointer, your 2 pointer, just trying to get different in a 10 item lineup on no house advantage. I think that's the spot where I don't mind getting different. But if you're not playing Steph on DraftKings and FanDuel, I think the under does seem like the play that Awesemo is shading towards. And, if Alex Caruso is the thing, if he gets in there, then you got to change your whole game plan.
Again, it's a minor difference. I'm not saying that it's like some game changing piece, but when you're talking about the difference of 1 point here or there in terms of the projection, I think that's enough to change it. I think it's enough to factor in for me that I would be on one side as opposed to the other. I'm probably steering away in the prop market in general from something like that. But on NHA specifically, I think that's a good enough, like the difference of 1 or 2 is enough to change my over or under bet there.
Yeah, and I think these are the ones too, as I mentioned, really these are your 1 or 2 pointers when you're debating when it's 50% propositions, 60% propositions. You're going to find much better odds on the No House Advantage projections page, or if you just go to Odds Shopper, check the ROI, the win percentage numbers on there. You're going to find a lot more beneficial numbers out there. But this is one, for a 1 or 2 pointer, I think the under definitely skewing that way. But it's one way to try to hedge, as we talked about on the show. So maybe take the over if you're not playing them on DraftKings or FanDuel.
Okay, and the highest probability bet on the board, according to Awesemo, is the over on Emmanuel Quickly's 10.5 points prop bet within a 94% chance of hitting. Spags, does this seem like a good 10-pointer tonight on No House Advantage?
Yeah, I would have him for 18 points tonight. So I think we're on the same page as Awesemo. And really the thing with Quickly is he's a high usage guy as minutes get more secure. Even if you see Frank Ntilikina get the start today for the Knicks, which does happen from time to time, happened actually last time out for the Knicks. And then I didn't play the second half or didn't start the second half. I actually might not have played it all in the second half, but Quickly did start there. I think that's a spot you're probably seeing tonight. Maybe some cause for concern with the groin, but you can't really account for injuries in this stuff. On paper, this seems like the prop you'd want the most here probably has to be the 10-pointer you'd start with today on No House Advantage.
So let's take a little deeper look into Quickly as well. So he's played 675 minutes this season. 533 have already been with those two, with Rose and Peyton off the floor. So we're kind of looking at those usage numbers right around 27% of being exactly accurate for this situation. You also get like a near perfect matchup in getting Brooklyn, a game that's going to be moving in pace. He's never going to have a more secure allotment of minutes. Frank Ntilikina is basically a de facto starter. He's just like, I don't know why, but God forbid they ever start their best player that they have in the backcourt. But yeah, for me, I've got him right around 20, and I'm going to be happy to take the over just about everywhere. He'll definitely be my 10-point. I've been playing a couple lineups over there a night. He'll definitely be in my 10-point confidence slot in every single one.
Good stuff. All right, you all, don't forget to play on No House Advantage, our sponsor, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across the NBA, MLB, NFL, and PGA for cash prizes. This exclusively peer-to-peer fantasy sports platform levels the playing field and makes it easier for you to win real cash compared with your traditional DFS sites. The best part is you can join for free today. Just download the No House Advantage app and use promo code Awesemo to receive a deposit bonus of up to $20. Whether you're a new member or a current one. Be your friends, not the house. Win big with player props today. Let's head on over to our DFS hedge. Guys, how can you hedge daily fantasy lineups with a bet like taking the over on a prop for a player you're fading tonight? Eric, we'll throw it over to you first.
So I think for me, it might be Keldon Johnson, which is a strange one to kind of throw out right off the bat. But as of right now, I'm planning on being much, much lighter in the DFS markets on him. It might be something where I can take a little bit of that on the other side, maybe take the over on rebounds, take the over on something that's kind of an ancillary piece, because if he gets there in points, he's probably going to get there in value. So maybe finding rebounds or assists or something of that nature to take an over on, that might be a way where you can win both sides of it. I try not to get in a crazy habit of hedging too much of my DFS exposure, but it works out really well on NHA, like we were talking about with Steph Curry, where you can maybe take the over on some of those props, like taking the over on 33.5, even getting to like 35, 36 in total points and assists. He's probably still not going to get there in terms of like what his projection would be at. If he goes for 45 in that nature, he's probably going for 55, 60 plus on DraftKings, and you're in a lot of trouble if you're going to be shorting him there. But there are ways of being able to set it up in a way. For me, Keldon Johnson would kind of be like the guy who sticks out for me, where I might be trying to take an over on some rebounds and fade elsewhere.
Yeah, I think for me, besides Steph Curry stuff that we talked about earlier, where I think if you're going to take some of the overs there, if you're not getting him in DFS lineups, and then maybe not worry about that as much if you're getting a good amount of exposure and you don't have to force your lineups to look poorly projected as a result too much. But I think one that I would consider taking is going to Brooklyn, just taking the spread there and trying to put a bet that's enough size, because honestly, I think they could happen either way, whether Quickly has a good day or not. You could see the Nets still put a beat down on the Knicks really in this spot either way, because there's such a high-powered offense. I know we talk a lot about the Knicks defense here and how it's better. It's still not great. It's only a 107 defensive efficiency rating for them. They just play slow to cover up some of those warts. And I think this spot, maybe that's the one way Quickly doesn't get there. But I think for me, right now, I know we talked about Quickly earlier, just looking at it all and thinking through it, I find it hard to believe I'm going to be under the field on Quickly. I think that'll be one piece of chalk I'll take a lot of. So I think if you are going to play a lot of Quickly, just betting on the Nets today could be one way to try to cover any potential losses that could come if Quickly's poor groin just flares up again. And you hate to see it for
Don't put that into the world. Don't put that into the world right now. Looking at my early run,
use, but also for basketball.
Them are fighting words if you decide to do that.
No, I'm playing them. So to be clear, no jinxies here. I want
no jinxies of the groin, please. That'd be great.
I don't
groin,
like that word.
Stay intact. Groin? You don't like the word groin?
I don't.
Why? It's a groin. It's the polite way of putting.
No, I just don't like it.
Okay.
Just personal preference.
I understand that.
What's the word you don't like?
Styrofoam. I hate styrofoam. I hate the word. I hate the texture. It makes me sad.
I like
Spags, your turn.
I feel like moist is one I know people have
no one likes moist
about. I don't mind moist. I like actually using the words that people don't like to try to really get a little bit of leverage on their psychology. So I don't know. I love every word. I feel like a vocabulary is where I thrive. That's really the one thing I've going for me in DFS is really the best vocabulary of any hosts out there.
You are a loving linguist. That is for sure.
A cunning one even.
God.
All right. Well, don't forget to check out the new win percentage and ROI percentage tools on oddshopper.awesemo.com to see some of the highest probability bets according to Alex Awesemo Baker every single night. These transitions have been so rough today. I apologize.
They've been amazing.
We're having a show. It's Mondays. We're having a classic Garfield Monday.
Here's the thing. The worse they are, sometimes the better they are. It's like Glorious where it's like this awkward air that exists and it's like, oh yeah, no, Eric is done talking. That's great.
Very hard, choppy transitions, but it's fine. Now it's time for one of our favorites, a little good dog, bad dog. There they are. In real life, there is no such thing as a bad dog. In betting and DFS, there are a lot of underdogs who may have no chance in their game. So who's a good dog to target tonight and who's a bad one? Spags, your good dog is.
My good dog is going to be Detroit tonight. I am just not a believer in San Antonio right now. And I think this is kind of a mutual get right spot really for San Antonio, especially going against a not great Pistons defense who, much like the Knicks, they play slow to cover up how bad they are, but a 110 defensive efficiency rating for them, put them closer to the bottom of the pack in the league. But it's the same thing for San Antonio. They don't play that fast. They also don't play great defense, 108.7 defensive efficiency for them. So these are numbers that I look at to try to figure out the quality of a matchup. And really to me, Jeremy Grant's a guy who had a down game last time out, but still had a ton of usage in that spot. His assist rate's been higher as well with all the guys who are out for Detroit now. No Blake Griffin, no Derrick Rose, still no Killian Hayes. There's just so many dudes who are out for them. No Dennis Smith out for health protocol still. I think the spot for Detroit, I really like a lot of these guys. Again, Delon Wright's one that I always get too much of, but the field will be there as well with me. Jeremy Grant, I think too, just a little bit too cheap, has some nice multipliers on SuperDraft, looks good pretty much in any of the sites you're going to look at, and definitely has an upside. I think this game, it's slow. It doesn't have the greatest combined total, which are usually things that we love for DFS. But I think targeting Detroit here and really keying in on this game as being one that has some potential for at least guys to have good fantasy performances, even if the totals don't get that high. I think that's where I want to be tonight. So Detroit will be my reluctant good dog.
I'm on the same good dog, so there's that. It's the only game where the dog, whoever's been trailing, actually has like positive line movement towards them. You've seen that line go from 2 to 1.5. I like getting a little bit of that exposure. We also saw that total plummet. I just think DeMar DeRozan off the floor is kind of a massive, massive deal for them. DeJounte Murray's shown spurts where he could do it without him on the floor. So from a DFS perspective, I like going that direction. But some of these other pieces have got to start producing somewhere. Jakob Poeltl isn't getting it done. Jeremy Grant, I do expect to kind of be the best player on the floor along with Murray. So Jeremy Grant, your minus 250 favorite to win most improved player this year for anyone who cares. We got on that early at like plus 300. So that was an exciting thing to be on. But I'm pretty sure for the most part, like it's hard for me to see Detroit like not getting it in good as long as you're getting a number where they're plus right now.
Eric, going right back to you for your bad dog.
Yeah, so my bad dog, it's kind of like border on what we were talking about before, but the Knicks in general up against Brooklyn, we've seen that line move now a full point. I was going to go in the direction, like we see the public with 67, there it is, 70% of bets right now from the public. I never like that feeling, but there's a reason for it. Brooklyn gets involved in a lot of these blowouts. It wouldn't matter if that line was 5 or 7 or anything like that. Like they're either going to go out and pound them or they're going to absolutely like keep it a close game, and you'd have to kind of like luck box it to cover the 7. So I like going away from the Knicks and going on the Brooklyn side of it.
I think for me, my bad dog, and to be clear, this is a bad dog in terms of just straight the spread. Like I think Sacramento's going to have a hard time covering the 3 points at Charlotte tonight to me, but this game fantasy wise, like that wouldn't be a reason why I wouldn't target Sacramento. I do think Sacramento looks fine here. My perennial ally / nemesis, Buddy Hield, I feel like looks pretty good today, and still a guy who's going to have some upside. Is playing over 35 minutes his last few games, as Tyrese Halliburton hasn't fully gotten his run back after his injuries. But De'Aaron Fox, we know the upside there. Going against Charlotte too has been a spot that benefits really guys who set up other players or who get set up, because they give up 13% more assisted twos, 7% more assisted threes. I think this spot could be when the Sacramento has a lot of fantasy production, but to me, Charlotte's just a class above in terms of their talent level and how, honestly, how they really don't underperform a lot against teams that they should beat. I feel like in this situation against Sacramento, I think Charlotte's going to put up a lot of points. That makes Sacramento fantasy viable, but if you're betting on them, I just don't think that's the move tonight.
Agreed.
All in agreement. I just really quick, Stacy in the chat said it's March Madness, or March Madness is here. It sure is. Congratulations to Mizzou, a number 9 seed. Just had to say that.
It's weird. I went to Iowa State, and we've generally had a good basketball school. We went like 2-22 this year. It's the most like jarring thing ever to go from, being very, very relevant. Yeah, no, that bad. And then football wise, we finished as a top 10 AP team. So I don't understand. Up is down, left is right, and it's 2021.
USC is clearly the best team out of all of ours in the tournament. My alums or my alum school, and Evan Mobley's a guy. Honestly, I haven't watched any college basketball at all, but I did watch the last couple games at USC. Evan Mobley is a beast. Like I like that guy a lot. He's like a stretch 4, stretch 5 kind of player who's got some Chris Bosh in him, I think, some ability to stretch. So I'm curious to see if we actually have the ability to make a run. But USC, I think I know, like we just never win. Even when we have good runs, like we lose to the Kevin Durant's of the world. So I don't anticipate having a ton of interest, but I'll pretend when Ben Ross is here, be like, oh yeah, it's so great, Ben. We love it.
This is the week where everybody turns into a college basketball tout. Do not just be careful out there. Matt Gutschewski is like the guy. Otherwise, no thanks. No thanks. Just turn off your TV. Nobody knows anything.
So true. All right, we've got make or break and fade of the day in the last 3 minutes of the show today, guys. Which player or game currently looks like a make or break spot to you on tonight's slate, Spags?
I think it's got to be quickly for me. And this could change if the ownership does get more onerous, right? Going into the show, we had him at about 28% ownership on DraftKings. I think I'll be above that. If he gets to be one of these players that's 40, 50%, because the hype picking up throughout the day, he's a buzzy player. Again, I know people don't like hearing about top shots on non-top shot shows, but this dude was like overvalued a crazy amount because the Knicks are decent. There's a lot of people who like him. Like I think the interest in playing a guy like quickly in this spot's going to be really high. So it wouldn't shock me if you see that ownership rise, but I think you kind of have to be there to some level. What level that'll be will depend on the final ownership projections that people will get. But for me, I think quickly, I like him as a player. He's fun to play going against Brooklyn. It feels like it should be an outlier spot besides whatever sore groin issues he's having.
So obviously quickly's one for me as well, but I'll go the Keldon Johnson route. Somebody that's got 29% ownership at the moment, coming up in the optimal and the boom bust tool, 22.3% of the time. Shout out to the boom bust tool, which is still my favorite thing to help me use to build lineups over here at Awesemo. It's phenomenal. Use it all the time. 6.4% of leverage, or 6.4 leverage score, negative 6.4 is a larger number than I'd want to probably be eating on him at the moment. So I'm looking at being light there. He has not looked good for 5 games. This is kind of a situation where if he was going to be lower owned, like in the 10 to 15% range, I could maybe get over top of it. But that is a large amount of ownership for a guy who doesn't have a steady role right now, who has minutes volatility, and I'm just looking to short him.
All right. Fade of the day. Is there one game, player, or team that you anticipate you'll have a lot less interest in than the rest of the public, Eric?
I'm curious. I think the Phoenix Suns are getting a little bit overvalued, just kind of like looking at them between Saric, Mikal Bridges, again, back to the boom bust tool, kind of guys that are popping up there. I could have some smatterings of Chris Paul, but we have not talked about the Phoenix Suns one time, and I think there's a reason for that. Against Memphis, you would think would be an up-pace game, maybe a spot where you could see them extended. 227 total's fine, but I just find it hard to get to any of these guys. Ayton at 6,300, I thought I would have interest. He's not really popping for me. It's hard to really know what to do with some of these wings. Obviously, you can go Paul. You can take Booker for a ceiling, but just kind of an unenticing spot compared to what I was expecting coming into the day. So I'm going to be lower than the public.
Yeah, one guy who jumped out to me in our ownership for DraftKings before the show was Rodney McGruder, who's a value play. He's actually had some decent minutes here, especially in the games when Jeremy Grant was out. And I'm going to keep mentioning Jeremy Grant. Somebody says I get paid each time that I say Jeremy Grant. So maybe that's right. Jeremy Grant. But I feel like in this spot, Magruder's just kind of the classic usage guy who's going to pop up based upon his limited amount of run, where he had a lot more usage in those games where the Pistons were short staffed. Now they're fully staffed. He's going to get secure minutes. It's going to make him pop up a lot in a lot of optimizers, and he's also 3,400. So that's fine. He maybe gets there, but I just don't have the most confidence at 25% ownership. That's a lot of Rodney Magruder out there. That could be bad chalk pretty fast.
Awesome stuff from you both. Eric Lindquist, Chris Spags, thanks for your time and expertise today. I am Kayla Knierim. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. The deeper dive and live before lock are coming right up next on this stream. So stay tuned and we'll see you guys tomorrow.
All right. Later, guys.
Awesome.
Hey, proud papa. Just want to say quick congrats to you.
Thanks, brother.
Have a good show, guys.
Wild life. Good, boys.
Welcome back.
Thanks, man. Tom was going to give me another 2 weeks. I was like, nah, I'm going back to work. What's up, Jordan? Hey, how's it going? Thanks, bro. I go away for 2 weeks and you change the music to this? This is clearly a porn intro. Let's rock. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NBA Deeper Dive presented by SuperDraft. I'm Dave Loughran. Glad to be back along with my man, Adam Scherer at ShipMyMoney DFS. It's been a long couple weeks, man, but good news. Got a healthy girl named Jordan, born on March 2nd. And I guess that's all you can ask for.
Yeah, congrats, man. Glad to have you back. Obviously missed you over those 2 weeks, but you had some more important stuff to deal with.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard it during the break, but Tom was going to give me an extra couple weeks. And I was like, I got to get up in my office and close this fucking door.
Yeah, I had heard that you might be gone a little bit while longer, but yeah, glad you came back early.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you this one. And it's Jordan with a Y, by the way, Jordan. You can't get that confused. But anyway, I'm happy to be back. And thanks to all of you guys in the comments and everyone on Twitter that sent me their best wishes. Really appreciate it. It meant a ton. I missed you guys, and I'm glad to be back. Glad to be talking basketball. So that's exactly what we're going to do here. As always, man, jumping back into the old routine, I'll ask you, 8-game slate, anything that stands out to you right out of the gate?
Kind of a difficult slate on DraftKings, at least right now. Not a lot of value that you're going to feel really good about. For example, Rodney Magruder showing up in some of my lineups early. That's never a spot that feels very good. FanDuel, I think it's a little bit different because they have a few players just drastically mispriced. So might be kind of difficult to be contrarian on FanDuel in some spots, but going to be a lot easier to make lineups that you like. On DraftKings right now, at least, and unless we get some news between now and lock, there's going to be some pretty uncomfortable plays that you have to make, I think.
By the way, Jordan with the Y, not like what's it, Giordano Alvarez? No,
why? Oh yeah.
Everyone in chat like what? No, look at me. Jordan with a Y instead of an A. So just to clarify that. That's awesome. Yeah, so just diving straight into this one, we'll kick it off with Sacramento and Charlotte. But before we do, hit that thumbs up. Show some love for a new dad here. Pump those likes up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. I'm telling you, all you guys that are already fathers or mothers, this is a tough life, man. I don't know if I'm cut out for it, Adam, but we'll figure it out. I don't envy anyone that has 3 kids, 2 kids, 1 kid. Shit's tough. But
I'm very glad to be sitting here not dealing with any of the stuff that I'm sure you are.
You'll get there. You'll get there. You were talking the other day about how, when I have kids and this and that, you'll be there, and you'll be saying the exact same thing. But hit that thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Help us hit that 60K mark. I don't even know what we're at right now, 53,000. Hopefully Josh has been holding down the fort. Sacramento, Charlotte, Sacramento Kings playing at a really, top 10 pace, but worst defense in the league. And if you run it back over the last month, they have a 122.5 defensive rating, Adam. Worst in the league by a wide margin. I mean, defensively, they've been awful. I go away for a little while, and De'Aaron Fox is up north of 9K on DraftKings. But overall, from an ownership standpoint on Awesemo, there's not a ton standing out here, despite the really high total in this game that's coming in right now at 239.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some good plays here, but from this game, but nothing that really stands out, I think, as a top priority. You mentioned De'Aaron Fox. I think he's a good option. Like, Charlotte's been playing at a fast pace. The Kings, play at a fast pace. Fox plays 1 million minutes, coming off a game where he played 40 minutes last time out. But he's gotten expensive enough to where, I don't think he really stands out as a priority. You can say the same thing about Rashawn Holmes, 6,400 on DraftKings. I think it's a perfectly fine salary. He's averaged 32 minutes per game in his games without Hassan Whiteside this year, which is good to see. Averages over a fantasy point per minute. So he looks like a good option, but, again, just sort of a good play, not a top option for me. Harrison Barnes kind of in that same boat. From the Kings side, there's just not a lot that really stands out to me outside of, kind of tournament plays, because guys like Fox and Holmes do give you a high ceiling.
So would you say any priorities whatsoever here? I get that some of these guys are high ceiling players. Marvin Bagley's got double-digit points in like 13 games straight, but it's not reflected in his fantasy totals. He has not really been a particularly high ceiling player, despite the fact that he's getting some additional run, that he's been somewhat productive, putting up decent stats, but nothing extraordinary at all.
Yeah, and the minutes have been trending back down a little bit, in part because Tyrese Halliburton's back. That's something that I don't anticipate getting better anytime soon. Halliburton's been on somewhat of a minutes restriction, but still played about 24 minutes last game. And we've seen all season long that he closes over Bagley pretty frequently. So, Bagley can produce at a high rate, but it's tough to get there. I don't think there's really any priorities from the Kings side for me. I think that if I am going there, like Fox and Holmes look like the 2 guys I like the most. Barnes is kind of useful from a roster construction standpoint because the forward positions are relatively weak tonight. But I think the Hornet side has guys that I like a little bit more than the Sacramento side.
Thanks for all the super chats. Diaper contributions from Andrew Kang, from Campany. Sorry, bud. And Abram. So appreciate you guys. Thanks for all the super chats and all the support you guys got going on here. On the other side of this one, I actually want to start it off with not LaMelo, not Gordon Hayward, but at the center position, a guy that you and I talk about kind of frequently. It feels like we're always kind of higher on him a lot of days than other people are, just because he goes virtually unowned. Cody Zeller. I know it's not exciting. He's not a sexy pick ever, Adam, but he's a +1 per minute guy, actually a solid fantasy point per minute guy when he's on the floor. You got to be on the floor. His minutes aren't insane, but he's facing the worst defense in the league, a team that's not one of the best rebounding teams. Both teams play at a top 10 pace. What do you think about Zeller today at the 5?
Yeah, I like him. And he's one of those values that I was kind of alluding to at the top of the show, where you're not going to feel great. Like, you're not going to feel really confident in him, but you have to find value somewhere on this slate. And taking a cheap center that averages over a fantasy point per minute and is in one of the most appealing matchups you can get in DFS is, a spot where I feel pretty good. I think that center, there's always a lot of opportunity cost there. And with Nikola Jokic on this slate, there's obviously opportunity cost again tonight, but it's not quite as deep a position as it normally is. And I think that it's a position where I will be looking for value, including Zeller. He played about 23 minutes last game, but that was a blowout against Toronto where he lost several minutes in the fourth quarter. The game before that, he played about 26 minutes. For the season, he's averaged between 25 and 26 minutes in the games that he has started. So I feel pretty comfortable expecting, around 25 minutes from Zeller. And at his price tag, 4,900 on DraftKings, 4,300 on FanDuel, that's really all that you're going to need as long as he produces at a normal rate or better in this matchup against Sacramento.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm not opposed to it. I have no issues going there. At what's his ownership right now? What's he coming in at? Like 10%?
On DraftKings, we have him at, about 10%.
About 10%. Yeah. So I don't hate it. If you get some additional minutes too, I actually like over 19.5 points, rebounds, and assists. Check that out. And go to oddshopper.awesemo.com for all of those bets. Everything's free. You can track your bets, get notifications on all of your bets. You can check out all of the different books to see where the best odds are. And you can search by name and by prop, all of that great stuff. It's entirely free too. But over 19.5 points, rebounds, and assists. Zeller averages over 19.5 points, rebounds, and assists on the season. Put him up against the worst defense in a pace-up matchup with a total upwards of almost 240. I'm all about that. So I'm on, and it's only the juice is, it's like minus 110. So it's not juice to the over at all. I'm all about it. What are you doing with the rest of Charlotte though?
I think Gordon Hayward looks like a pretty strong option here as well. I mentioned it before when we talked about Harrison Barnes that the forward positions just aren't that strong today. But Hayward seems like he goes a little bit undervalued or under-owned on a lot of slates. It's obviously a really good matchup for him. He's averaged over a fantasy point per minute and about 35 minutes per game this year. LaMelo Ball being in the starting lineup hasn't really had a negative impact on Hayward as well. He still gets his in terms of assists and rebounds and obviously scoring. So I think that it's a pretty good price point, a good matchup for Hayward. I think especially on FanDuel at 7,400 where you have to roster two small forwards, he looks like a really good play.
That it for this one?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, LaMelo, Rozier, both in great matchups, but both also pretty expensive.
I think if we looked at the total and the two teams in this game and the pace and the defense before actually digging into the salaries, you'd think we'd be a lot higher on this game.
Yeah, it's tough too because like guys like LaMelo and like De'Aaron Fox that typically you really, really like, the guard positions are just stacked on this slate and the forward positions are pretty thin. So I think it's like if LaMelo were a forward or De'Aaron Fox were a forward, they would look like great options tonight. This does strike me as the kind of game where like if you game stack it, you're going to get a lot of pretty low owned guys and the potential for a game that just goes nuts. So I do think that's kind of an interesting strategy in tournaments.
Anthony Davis with the 50 banger says, "Missed this combo. Much love." Yeah, I'm glad to be back. It's a solid combo. Let's be real. We've got the chemistry. We've been doing this a while. I'll contribute to the diaper fund. Thank Jesus. Mine is almost out of his. Good luck. Poop diapers are the worst. Bro, I never held a baby in my life until this one. Never wanted to. People always thought I was nuts. But if it's not mine, why do I want to hold it? It sounds horrible, right? But it's true. Never changed a diaper. None of that. Until, they start having these monster blowouts and I'm in an entirely new world. Dude, it sucks. Oh, man. But, never held a baby. Maybe like a year old or so. But newborns, I always thought I'd break them. Milwaukee and Washington. Here's a kind of interesting game because once we get to the Alex Len bit, last game, same matchup, it gets pretty insane. But we'll start it off with the Bucks with Giannis Antetokounmpo. They're 8.5 point favorites on the road, 242.5 total. So another really high total. Are you on Giannis today getting 20+% ownership?
Yeah, of course. There's just no reason not to be. I mean, he's one of the most productive players in the league, and he's available at one of the weakest positions on the slate. You can roster him at power forward on both DraftKings and FanDuel, and I think that just becomes really useful. And then, you factor in the matchup here where Washington's been the fastest team in the league all year. They've been a poor defensive team pretty much all year. They don't rebound well. It just sets up as a spot where Giannis should be able to do a variety of things really well. He started off pretty slowly against Washington last time out. Only had like 2 field goal attempts, I think halfway through the second quarter, but then got things going, ended up with a massive triple-double with 33 points, 11 boards, 11 assists. I expect similar production tonight. I mean, it's just a spot against Washington where they don't have an answer for most people. They definitely don't have an answer for Giannis.
Right. Do you like anybody else from Milwaukee?
On FanDuel, I think there's very appealing pricing on several other guys from Milwaukee. On DraftKings, it's kind of like when you look at Middleton, when you look at Holiday, when you look at Bobby Portis, any of those guys clearly can have a big game against Washington, but I think that they're priced pretty appropriately. On FanDuel, though, 7,400 for Middleton, 5,800 for Drew Holiday, who played 32 minutes last time out, and only $4,000 for Bobby Portis at a pretty thin power forward position where I would like to be able to save some money. All of those guys stand out as pretty strong options. Middleton, obviously the second highest usage guy behind Giannis here. Holiday, I think in this matchup has the potential for a little bit more defensive upside than normal because Russell Westbrook is the most turnover prone guard in the league. I think Holiday should benefit from that, which is especially important on FanDuel where steals are 3 points. And then Portis, you're expecting 20 to 22 minutes, but against a Washington team that doesn't rebound well, doesn't play defense. And you're talking about Portis, averages over a fantasy point per minute at 4K flat on FanDuel. I think he gets it done at that salary.
Does he have a higher turnover rate than Harden?
Westbrook?
Yeah.
Almost positive.
Yeah, it's 18.1. Let's see. Harden's at 18.0.
Okay, yeah.
Brutal, but they're going to produce, and that's all you need. Washington's always played at a fast pace this year and last year, but over the last month, they're averaging 2 additional possessions per 48 over the next closest team, almost 106 possessions per 48. It's insane. And you've got Alex Len out there getting the nod last time, played 33 minutes in this same matchup, Adam, in a game that they only lost by 6 points, and he was +9. So do we see Scott Brooks go back to Alex Len? Now, first of all, how many players in the league can you say are more liable to get pulled in the first 5 minutes of a game and never come back in? It feels like no matter where Alex Len goes, he's on thin ice, but he's dirt cheap. He played 33 minutes in this exact same matchup, played well, +9, wasn't a liability, averages north of a fantasy point per minute, not just this season, but for his entire career. There is a ceiling here. Like there's a pretty high ceiling for somebody like Alex Len if he gives you another even 25 minutes against, sure, a good defensive team in the Bucks, but a fast-paced team with a total above 242.
Yeah, that's pretty much the same point I made in the deep dive article today. Like, do I think that Len plays 32 minutes again? Probably not. It's definitely in the range of outcomes, but we've seen all season long that Scott Brooks is very inconsistent with his center rotation. Len did play well last game and, stayed on the floor, obviously. But even if you get mid-20s from him at 3,700 on DraftKings, 3,600 on FanDuel, he's likely to produce enough to be a good point per dollar play. He's averaged about 0.85 DraftKings points per minute in 52 minutes played with both of Westbrook and Beal on the floor this year. But overall, he's averaged more than a fantasy point per minute this year. He's been about a fantasy point per minute guy for his career as well. So I do think that the ceiling is definitely worth the risk that you're taking on, given Len's very inexpensive salary. I do just still think there's a lot of volatility here, given that it's Alex Len and it's Scott Brooks.
Huge volatility. I said, there are very few players that when they get a start that there's very few players that you worry more about that they're not going to make it past the first quarter than Alex Len.
Yeah, and one other thing to keep in mind, too, is that Davis Bertans is questionable for this game. He didn't play last game. Typically, that doesn't really matter. We've seen true centers playing close to 48 minutes for Washington for a while now. But given that they'll most likely use Rui to defend Giannis for a lot of the game, you could potentially see a closing lineup that doesn't have a center at all if Bertans plays.
Yep. 14.6 points, 11.3 rebounds per 36 for his career. So, and 1.9 blocks. Alex Len can get it done. So volatile, no doubt. But if he plays 30 minutes again, there's a good chance that if you don't have Alex Len, you're going to be in trouble. There's also a very good chance if you have Alex Len, you're going to be in trouble. What are you interested in anything else for Washington?
Not particularly. Pricing came up on Westbrook. Pricing came up on Rui. Bradley Beal on DraftKings looks kind of interesting at 9,400. The shooting guard position's pretty weak. And one thing that I noticed in building like cash lineups before the show, or quote unquote, optimal lineups, is that I found myself paying down a lot at shooting guards. So I think that means that most likely the field's going to be building lineups where they pay down there. So one way you could get contrarian in tournaments potentially is paying up there. Bradley Beal at 9,400, I think, is a little bit underpriced for his upside on DraftKings. I mean, this is a guy with about a 35% usage rate in games that he's played with Westbrook. He's averaging around 35 minutes per game. So not someone that I think really fits into cash type builds, but someone that I think does give you a different way to build lineups without really sacrificing ceiling.
Dude, I got to turn these Schefter and Ian Rappaport alerts off for today. It's out of control. Just a ton of players that you don't care about. Some you've never even heard of. Trying to get this NBA news coming in, but I get faked out every time. Pacers Nuggets starting at 10 p.m. Eastern tonight, Adam. So it just got pushed back an hour.
Guessing they're waiting on COVID tests?
I don't. That's my only assumption. Yeah. It's not like it's raining too hard.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll see. But as of now, 10 p.m. start time. Keep that in mind. And check out our boy News God's blog and on Twitter. You can check all of that out. He'll keep you up to date on all of that good stuff. You ready to talk about the Knicks and the Brooklyn Nets? Because this game's kind of fun.
Yeah.
All right. So Emmanuel Quickly. I wish I was around to see him last game because I've sung his praises a lot this season, and oftentimes it hasn't worked out. But we know that we know what he's capable of doing. And without Derrick Rose on the floor, without Peyton on the floor, I took Dennis Smith off the floor. And for a minute, I even took Austin Rivers off, but it didn't matter because he's actually better with Austin Rivers on. But again, what's it matter? 26.5% usage and 1.14 DraftKings points per minute, 23% assist rate without all of those guys. Peyton is doubtful. Rose is out. What do you think about Quickly today? Obviously getting a ton of ownership. Brooklyn's played a lot better lately, but they're still a pace-up team with a less than stellar defense. How much Quickly do you anticipate yourself getting to?
I think he's one of the better plays on DraftKings, and I think he's like one of the top 3 plays probably on FanDuel. Only 4,600 on FanDuel, 5,600 on DraftKings. I'm interested to see what the starting lineup is here for the Knicks because we've had Tom Thibodeau all season long. Whenever he has a chance to start quickly, he still refuses to do it. You saw the same thing in the Knicks last game where they started Frank Ntilikina, but Quickly did start the second half, played a ton of minutes in the second half, finished with about 33 minutes in that game. Hopefully we just get a Quickly start here and don't have to worry about it. If he comes off the bench, he becomes a little bit riskier, but I think that at his salary, it's still, even if he comes off the bench, it's likely that he does well enough to, justify his salary. He played about 12 minutes in the first half and then played almost the entire second half. So, I'll feel better about him if he starts. We do still have Austin Rivers out. We have Derrick Rose out. We have Elfrid Payton doubtful. So hopefully he gets the start. But even if he doesn't, I still think he's a good value, especially on FanDuel at 4,600.
By the way, thank you, YouTube chat. Apparently they just got hit with a monster blizzard. So Pacers couldn't get in. The airport was closed. And all that.
Got it. So they're in now, I'm guessing.
They must, but yeah, I think they already landed. But that makes me feel a lot better about it because I'd rather it be a snowstorm than have to worry about someone clearing a COVID test.
Yeah, for sure. Especially, because with both, neither team is really missing a ton of guys. So if they were pushing the game for COVID tests, it seems like there was a chance that like a million guys had it.
For sure. Hey, what about Julius Randle? I know his price is up there, but I ran some Wowie queries with Quickly on the floor, and I was just curious, like, okay, does it hurt him? It actually, you see his per minute production go to like 1.38. And I think I took Peyton and Rose off, but his usage is up near 30%, assist rate 20 plus. Like Julius Randle playing alongside Quickly, even if it's per 30 plus minutes, has actually benefited him this season.
Yeah. And I think, over a larger sample, maybe it ends up coming back to like even, but I don't think.
Would you rather have Quickly on the floor with him, or would you rather have Rose? Because I'd rather have Quickly since Rose can do it more facilitating.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'd rather him be out there with Quickly than Rose. So yeah, I definitely don't think it hurts him. Maybe it helps him a little bit. The thing with Randall is just, it's kind of similar to what I was saying about Bradley Beal, where I think it's going to be really, really difficult to get to him in any sort of optimal build, because when you look at power forward, you're pretty typically going to be paying down or you're going to be rostering Giannis. And Randall's not that much less expensive than Giannis. Yeah. But I think in tournaments, he still obviously has a very high ceiling. I think it is worth noting that over the last month, the Nets have actually been playing at a pretty slow pace, and they've been playing better defensively. So doesn't look like the great matchup that it was a couple of weeks ago when they just were not defending anyone and they were running up and down the floor as fast as any team in the league. So kind of a neutral matchup, I think, for Randall. Still a really good player, just difficult to get to him outside of tournaments.
Yeah, they're defensively, they're like right outside of the bottom 10 over the last month, but that's a far cry from where they were a month ago.
They were the worst by like multiple possessions for a while.
Right, exactly. And by the way, you're right. I guess I pulled it wrong earlier, but they're averaging over the last 30 days, they're playing at the 7th slowest pace, 97.5 possessions per 48. That's slow. I mean, that's about as slow as the Knicks have been playing over that span.
Yeah, I mean, when you let James Harden dribble more, I guess it slows the game down a little bit.
Yeah, 223 total. Makes things interesting for sure. But I agree in terms of the build for Randall. He is really expensive, but just wanted to point out that he, even with Quickly, who I think there's this assumption, well, Quickly, a high usage guy, this and that, sure, but so is Derrick Rose. And And Julius Randle is a triple-double threat who is going to command as many touches as any big in the game and more than most guards. So high upside, but I think you're right. The slower pace, Brooklyn, it's not the same team from a month ago. Probably an easy spot to get away from. What are you doing with the rest of New York, though? Alec Burks, any interest there?
Yeah, actually, he was one guy that when I initially wrote the deep dive, I didn't mention him because I just didn't really he didn't really stand out. But then once I started building lineups, I realized he's actually really useful on DraftKings in particular. $4,400 small forward, and it's just a really weak small forward position where I think it's really nice to be able to pay down. My concern with Burks, so he played 27 minutes last game. He closed the first half. He only played about 10 minutes in the second half. So my concern is like if he didn't close the first half there and quickly did not close the first half. So let's say quickly closes the first half, Burks doesn't, then you still are only looking at like 20 to 22 minutes from Burks, even though all of these guys were out for that game as well. But I do think at the very least, he has the ability to pick up more minutes if he's playing well, which is really all that you can ask for from a $4,400, small forward. And Burks does average around just shy of a fantasy point per minute this year. So I think it's kind of similar to Alex Len for me, where it wouldn't be surprising if Burks just plays way fewer minutes than I'm hoping that he does. But if he plays well, he has a path to playing another 26 or 27 minutes, which is kind of all you can ask for with his salary.
Any other interest in the New York Knicks?
Quickly, Burks, Randall. No, I think that's about it.
Just in one word, what is the likelihood, maybe a percentage, just off the top of your head, okay, that Emmanuel Quickly, Tom Thibodeau pulls a Tom Thibodeau and decides that Frank Ntilikina deserves 35 minutes tonight?
Much higher than it should be.
Yep,
yeah.
I know. Even though last game Quickly played well, and in the 21 minutes he played in the second half, they pulled away from OKC and ended up taking like a 26-point lead. But unfortunately, that doesn't mean shit to Tom.
Yeah, I mean, Ntilikina started that game and then never came back in until
two fouls too.
Yeah, he came back in with 1 minute and 45 seconds left in the fourth quarter after subbing out in the first quarter. So
isn't that wild that he was the starter and then he comes in for a minute of blowout run?
Garbage time. Yeah, so I mean, reading into the rotations and how the game went, you should feel confident in Quickly. Understanding what Tom Thibodeau does makes you feel a little bit less confident.
So of the high-priced players on this slate, just using DraftKings pricing for simplicity's sake, you have Giannis, Harden, Jokic, Doncic, Westbrook, LeBron, and Stephen Curry, all above $10,000. That's 7 players. If you throw Randall and Sabonis in there, they got 9 over 9,600, but I don't want to even include them. Just take those 7 guys above 10K. All of them are great players, a lot of them in good matchups. Where would you put, as we transition to the Nets here, where would you put Harden among all of those great options?
Second or third.
Okay. So where are you at on the Nets? We can start with Harden and work our way through this team before we move on.
Yeah, I mean, Harden, I think, obviously is a great play here. The Knicks have been one of the worst matchups for DFS all season long. They haven't been quite as good defensively recently. They haven't been playing quite as slow. Still not a fast-paced team and still not a bad defensive team, but, at least teams are getting it done a little bit more against the Knicks. But really with Harden, it's just you're getting so many minutes out of him. He's averaged about 38 minutes per game in the games that he's played without Durant and with Kyrie since joining the Nets. Tons of rebounds, tons of assists, obviously, and 30+% usage rate. So I think Harden looks great. The only thing that makes it difficult is that, for one, there's a lot of very good mid-range guard options, and that leads to Giannis being a lot easier to get into lineups over Harden. In addition to the fact that I think Giannis is just in a better spot, but then also you still have, like you said, you have all those other guys that are just a little bit less expensive. So Luka, I don't feel like there's a big enough gap in range of outcomes between Harden and Luka that I'm going to try super hard to find an extra $400 if I can only get up to Luka. Same thing kind of can be said for LeBron, who's even cheaper. And then on FanDuel, it's going to be really difficult to get to Harden because you have 2 of the most mispriced guys on the slate at shooting guard in Emmanuel Quickly and Karis LeVert. So Harden probably ends up being a kind of contrarian play on FanDuel, paying up for him because it means you're foregoing one of the best value options.
Len is starting, by the way. So
good.
We have that. I'm going to end up riding or dying with Alex Len today. I don't see any way out of that, unfortunately. I also don't really see any interest in the Nets outside of Harden. And if you're looking at Awesemo, Alex Baker himself, his projections, he's got the Brooklyn Nets, no one above 5% other than James Harden, who's around 12% on DraftKings. And if you guys want to check out all of the ownership we have for FanDuel, for DraftKings, for Yahoo, you want to check out the player projections, which are free today, by the way. So are the SuperDraft projections, our sponsor, and ownership projections are free for NHL. You want to check all of that stuff out, go to awesemo.com/join. Check out all of the subscriptions we have to offer, but take advantage of this promo. It is Shamrock, St. Patrick's Day coming up. It's the best promo we've done since the end of 2020. You get, for only $15, everything on the site for the entire week, an Awesemo Plus Platinum Weekly, half off. That brings it to around $15. So you're getting ownership, player projections, ownership. I already said that. Player rankings. You're getting the top stack tool, the boom bust tool, the lineup builder, all of that. And there's just everything on the site you need to be a great DFS player. All of the tools built by the #1 ranked DFS player in the world. Awesome articles. And Adam's deep dive article is free every single day of the week. So even if you don't decide to use the promo code Shamrock at awesemo.com/join, of course, check out his free content as well while you're at it. But go ahead, check it out. Shamrock, $15, 50% off, Awesemo Plus Platinum, all of the tools. And all of these guys, by the way, join the premium Slack chat if you do. Don't forget to do that, because we have office hours where a lot of the pros on our site are answering questions in a more intimate situation, helping you understand and fine tune the game a little bit more. Everything we have to offer, I think, will help you a ton. So use that promo code Shamrock. And if you're a college basketball person, if you're stoked for March Madness, we've got a package under college basketball, $29.95 for everything March Madness. Shows, projections, articles, everything for DFS, everything for betting, less than $30 for all of the March Madness content. Check it all out at awesemo.com/join. Adam, that was a quick way of me, or a low roundabout way of me asking you, what are you doing with non-hardened nets?
Yeah, I can see how you were getting there.
Pretty solid, right? I mean, talk about a segue.
Yeah, I mean, it's outside of Harden. I don't think there's a ton. Like Kyrie Irving, I don't think anybody needs to be told that he's capable of having a really big game, but he doesn't really stand out amongst all the other guard options. The one spot that I am interested in is DeAndre Jordan. He's 5,300 on DraftKings, which is fine, but he's only 4,600 on FanDuel. Played about 29 minutes last game. Jeff Green played 30 minutes. TLC was out of that game. He's probable tonight. So I think that Jordan's minutes could be affected a little bit, but he's averaged 26 minutes per game in the games that he's played without without Durant, with Harden, and with Jeff Green. So even if you get around 26 minutes from Jordan, he has a nice size advantage against this Knicks front court. I think he'll be able to rebound here. And at 4,600 on FanDuel, I think that's a pretty decent spot to pay down in tournaments.
Okay. San Antonio, Detroit Pistons, lowest total of the slate, 213. I have a feeling that on most slates, it would be pretty easy for us to just cruise right through this one. But Keldon Johnson pulling the most ownership on this entire slate right now. We'll see what happens once we get some ownership updates. But as it stands right now, Adam, two of the highest owned players on this slate are Keldon Johnson and Rodney McGruder. Yes, Rodney McGruder. And then Derek White and DeLon Wright also getting 20+% projected ownership right now. So again, lowest total of the slate, two teams that really haven't been all that fantasy friendly collectively all season long. But, having guys like DeMar DeRozan out is clearly going to make a pretty significant difference. Dennis Smith Jr. out for Detroit, Wayne Ellington doubtful. It's opening the doors to some opportunity. I don't know what they'll do with it, but the minutes should be there.
Yeah, when I said that there were going to be some plays that made you feel really uncomfortable, especially on DraftKings today, I basically was referring to this game. I mean, it's the game with the lowest total on the slate. Like you said, you don't look at this matchup and, get excited about anything, but the pricing just stands out on a lot of guys from this game. You mentioned Keldon Johnson getting the most ownership on the slate right now on DraftKings. He's been absolutely awful recently, but at the same time, he's also lost minutes to foul trouble a couple games ago, to blowout in their last game. I think that if this game's competitive, you're most likely getting 28 minutes from Keldon Johnson. He's been just shy of a fantasy point per minute guy this year. He's small forward eligible, which is probably the weakest position on the slate. And it's just a good value. The same can be said for Derek White, who was really bad in his first couple of games back. And then yesterday he was great, or in their last game. I don't remember if it was yesterday or the day before, was great on the back of 4 blocks and 2 steals, which you're not going to see anytime soon. But, assuming he's in the starting lineup again, you should expect around 28 minutes out of him. Another guy that averages a fantasy point per minute and is inexpensive. So both of those guys look like good values. It is a spot where in tournaments, I think, this is not a situation where a bunch of ownership is going to these guys because there's no way they fail and, it's just an amazing matchup. Ownership is going here because they project slightly better as point per dollar plays than a lot of the guys around them. I think that in tournaments, you can find pivots to these guys that have a very similar range of outcomes, and that these guys are relatively likely not to do well, just given the game environment.
All right. Thank you. I got a Manning for the super chat. Appreciate you. Yeah, I know the horror stories with newborns are tough. Everyone tells me I just try and tune it out at this point, but it'll be okay. There were a couple of comments I wanted to hit on in chat. I'll go back to them. I can't find them right now, but there were a few ones that stood out that would have been good questions, but you know what? I'm all over the place, so I lost them. Do you want to talk about actually, do you have anything else for the Spurs first?
DeJounte Murray is a really high upside play. I don't think it's going to be that easy to get to him. I think that pricing is much more affordable on Johnson and White than it is Murray, but I do think you can go to Murray in tournaments, and that he does at least somewhat negatively correlate with Derek White as well. So, maybe a popular Derek White fails because DeJounte Murray has a bigger game than expected.
On the Pistons side, it's not just the Spurs getting ownership, and, someone said, Magruder chalk night, what could go wrong? Well, Detroit and the Spurs chalk night, collectively, what could go wrong? The answer, Adam, is a whole lot, but here we are discussing it. Rodney Magruder, dirt cheap, getting a ton of love today for obvious reasons, really just that price point. But mind you, this is Rodney Magruder. Let's keep that in mind. DeLon Wright getting around 21%. Josh Jackson's price point is kind of hovered up in that mid to high 5K range. If he was lower than that, he'd be very, very popular tonight. But it's him, Plumlee, Jeremy Grant, all of them getting some love. Even Sadiq Bey coming in around 10% on DraftKings.
Yeah, so starting with Magruder, you had him play 28 minutes last game, and that was with Wayne Ellington starting and playing 26 minutes. Now Wayne Ellington's doubtful as well. So you have Ellington doubtful. You still have Diallo out. Svi obviously was traded. So you have a very thin, 2/3 spot rotation on this team right now. And Magruder is the next guy up to fill that. I'm assuming he plays at least 26 to 28 minutes like he did last game. He could potentially play more. For his career, he's only averaged 0.63 fantasy points per minute. This year, he's been better, up around 0.8 or 0.85, but I would expect that he kind of goes back towards his career averages. It's just another guy where it's more about what else he gets you in the lineup than it is about him. It's hard to fill out the shooting guard position today. It's difficult to find inexpensive value that you feel remotely good about. And so going to someone like Magruder just to kind of cover that position on DraftKings is a pretty easy way to go. It's another guy where in tournaments, if you want to avoid him and go another direction, there's a pretty good chance that he does not score enough points to be someone that you have to have in your lineup. You're just going to, have to find another way to get value to get to the expensive guys that you want. But I think a very good cash play on DraftKings. I also think he can pretty much be ignored on FanDuel because, again, you have Karis LeVert and Emmanuel Quickley at shooting guard.
So I understand the positional differences, of course, but would you rather play Alex Len or Rodney Magruder? Rodney Magruder, 0.63 DraftKings point per minute producer for his career in tournaments, of course.
Yeah. So, right now I have both in my main lineup, but I think I feel better about Len, or I guess to phrase it differently, I feel more scared about not having Len. If I don't, than I do about not having Magruder. But the thing is the positions, like you said, at center, I think Len's a good value at 3,700, but it's not going to be that difficult to find $1,200 more and get Cody Zeller, for example, or on FanDuel to find, $900 more, I think, or $700 more and get Cody Zeller. Or DeAndre Jordan's only $300 more than that. So with the center position having so many options, I think that Magruder will be in my cash lineup before Alex Len is, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, for sure. Both of them have a floor of 3.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm loving these memberships, by the way, the membership badges on YouTube. That's something we've been working on for a while, implemented that, and we got a lot coming down the pike. So for all of you guys that are members or thought about doing it, it's cool to see that and appreciate all of that in chat. We got a lot more coming up for sure too. Let's talk about, well, how about this? Before we do, since this game's so popular, give me just your overall final thoughts on San Antonio and Detroit, just in context with the entire slate, given that it's so popular. And there are a lot of guys that have not played well, that are not historically good per minute guys, but are going to be very popular today from this game on both sides.
Yes, I mean, I think need to touch on DeLon Wright a little bit too, just because he is cheap. He played 32 minutes last game. He's averaged about a fantasy point per minute in his games without Blake Griffin and Rose this year. And he should benefit as well from all these guys being out in the Detroit backcourt. So, I think he's getting a lot of ownership for good reason. He's a little bit less expensive than he probably should be. Jeremy Grant is a perfectly reasonable option at a pretty weak power forward position. I think on FanDuel at 7,300, he looks a little bit better than he does on DraftKings. And you mentioned Josh Jackson. I think that's actually an interesting way to go in tournaments because he's a very high usage guy, especially without Rose. And he only played about 22 minutes last game, but with Ellington being out, you would think Jackson's going to pick up at least a few more minutes, and his salary is kind of creeping down. So I think that's a spot where, like, from a medium projection standpoint, DeLon Wright's going to look a little bit better than Jackson. Point per dollar, Magruder is going to look better. But Jackson maybe goes a little bit overlooked because of his volatility, and that's something you can take advantage of in tournaments.
I think so too. All right, let's move on then. Let's talk Clippers and the Dallas Mavericks. As it stands right now, and I pull these all of these lines from Odd Shopper, mentioned it earlier in the show. Check it out. Shop all of the odds, everything totally for free. Odds, different books. You got watch list. You can track all of your bets. Check out all of the props for everything. Just go there. Anyway, pull it from there. Clippers -1.5, 228.5 total in Dallas. Let's start with the Clippers side of the ball. And I don't want to start with Kawhi or Paul George. I want to start with the possibility that Serge Ibaka does not play, because if he doesn't play, you have someone in Ivica Zubac who last game got in some early foul trouble, but ended up playing not a ton. And I'm wondering how many people are going to look at that and assume that he doesn't get minutes if Ibaka's out, who only played like 8 minutes, because I think Zubac probably gets a good amount of run today if Ibaka's out. And I'm not sure you want Patrick Patterson out there for as long as he was last time. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think Zubac would be a pretty strong option if Ibaka is ruled out. Like you said, Zubac dealt with some foul trouble, and then that game got out of hand. So, I mean, the fourth quarter, the entire fourth quarter for the Clippers yesterday was played by Amir Coffey, Daniel Oturu, Luke Kennard, Patrick Patterson, and Terrence Mann. So you can just ignore that Zubac didn't play in the fourth. He picked up 3 fouls in the first half, like you said. So I don't want to read into that rotation yesterday. I think that Zubac would most likely play at least mid-20s, if not more, and he's a very good fantasy producer when he's out there. So he would look like a good option. We just might not have this news in time, but that is one spot where I think you should be looking to late swap if Ibaka's ruled out.
Okay. Yeah, I do too. Plus, if Ivica Zubac is not a bad fantasy point per minute guy, like, he's not a bad player. So when I have someone like that and I'm looking at him against the Dallas Mavericks, whose front court is hardly imposing, it's not just someone that can get minutes, but it's someone that can actually produce with them. And we've seen him do it a lot in the past. So what are you doing with the rest of the Clippers? Yeah,
one other note on Ibaka, if he sits, I think you could see a few more minutes from Marcus Morris as well, who is 3,900 on DraftKings at those weak forward positions. So that's another spot where he probably ends up being low owned if we get that news late. As far as the main guys go, Kawhi and George, both strong options. Neither one really stands out as a priority for me here. George on DraftKings, at shooting guard, if you are paying up, kind of similar to Bradley Beal, is certainly a high upside guy that you can get to. On FanDuel, it's really interesting with George too, because on most slates at 7,900, he would be one of the most popular shooting guard options and one of the most popular guys on the slate. But because of LeVert and Quickly, it's just going to be so difficult to get to George. We only have him projected for about 15% ownership right now. So, again, I think that just going Quickly and LeVert and being different elsewhere is the easiest way and probably the best way to go on FanDuel. But if you are looking to be different at shooting guard, I think using Paul George as a mid-range guy and using James Harden as a pay-up guy are ways to be, somewhat contrarian and get away from a very popular build that pays down to both shooting guard spots.
someone in chat said, these guys are praying that you play Rodney Magruder. I said he's got a 3 fantasy point floor. I
don't really see right. There would have to be a lot of really weird news for me not to have Rodney Magruder on DraftKings in my cash lineup tonight.
Right. Cash is so much different than tournament. It's like
you're
just trying to not do something dumb in cash.
Yeah.
You know? And in tournaments, have you crunched any lineups yet?
Just for I'm only playing cash, so I've built cash lineups. But and I mean in tournaments, it's still tough on DraftKings because there's so much multi-position eligibility that you can just build really high upside lineups with a lot of really good players if you're just willing to bite the bullet and play someone like Magruder. But yeah, in tournaments, it is pretty unlikely that Magruder scores like 30 fantasy points and that at the end of the night you're saying, oh, I couldn't have won a tournament because I didn't have Magruder. It's more about what else is getting in that lineup. So certainly no issue with getting away from him in tournaments. Huge issue with getting away from him in cash.
Okay. What are we doing with the Dallas side of the ball, starting with the obvious Luka Doncic, 10,600 on DraftKings? Not really a crazy price point.
Yeah, I think it pretty much starts and ends with Luka for me from the Dallas side, but I think he looks great. And, I said it when we were talking about James Harden. Like, I think Harden projects a little bit better than Luka does, but in terms of range of outcomes and even average projection, I don't think the margin is that wide. Luka for the year has averaged about 1.65 DraftKings points per minute when he's played with Porzingis. Harden averages between 1.6, 1.65 fantasy points per minute without Durant and with Kyrie. So really you're just talking about maybe a couple extra minutes going to James Harden, but they're very, very similar plays. The Clippers have really struggled defensively lately as well, which certainly could benefit Luka. I think he's a great play. It's just that, again, in terms of like building the lineups that look the best, paying down at point guard is going to be a pretty popular way to go because you have, like on DraftKings, you have Quickly, you have White, you have DeLon Wright, you have so many guys that you can save money on, and then you can pay up at the forward spots for, Giannis or LeBron. So I think roster instruction wise, it might be kind of tough to get to Luka, but I do think that he's a very good play if you can get there.
Anybody else? You said it starts and ends, but I'll give you the opportunity. Otherwise, let's move on because we still got 3 games to hit on.
Yeah, I'm fine with moving on. Like, everybody knows Kristaps Porzingis can have a good game, but.
Yep. 370 likes. Can we get that to 500, guys? That would be greatly appreciated. And I'm going to take a second to use this platform for entirely selfish reasons. I was away for 2 weeks, wasn't really on the Twitters. Josh Engleman said he's going to catch up to me. I would like that not to happen. And with your help, we can stay on top. So can Adam. Well, actually, Adam, you'd have to catch him again. But follow him at ShipMyMoney DFS. Follow me at Loughy_D, LOUGHY_D. It's appreciated, guys. All right. Let's talk about the Pacers and the Denver Nuggets. I just want to throw this over to you and get your take on it out of the gate. Pacers 4.5-point dogs, 223.5-point total. Caris LeVert making his return and immediately jumps into the fold, plays 27 minutes, gets up 14 shots, and they win by 11 over a really good Phoenix Suns team. What are we doing with Caris LeVert? The price point is not exactly for the faint of heart.
Yeah, on DraftKings, I'm still pretty comfortable ignoring him. He played 27 minutes, which was great to see. Not any sort of massive restriction there. They had said that he wouldn't be limited coming into that game. And he also had about a 31% usage rate, got up 14 field goal attempts, did play all of his minutes alongside Domantas Sabonis, but I don't think that was really surprising. But 7K on DraftKings, it's just still really, really difficult to get there. 4,100 on FanDuel, though, is probably the easiest play on the slate. You're talking about someone that is a massive usage guy that also does at least a little bit in terms of playmaking, depending on who he's on the floor with, and is most likely going to play around 30 minutes tonight at 4,100. I don't really know how you get away from him on FanDuel.
Okay. So the rest of this team, I heard people talking about Sabonis only had a 19% usage rate in the first game with Caris LeVert back. And, I think it's certainly something to look into. You have Brogdon, you have Sabonis, now you have Caris LeVert. I don't know what Jeremy Lamb's status is. But the one thing about Sabonis is he's going to, similarly to Julius Randle, he's a legitimate triple-double threat that is one of the league leaders in touches every single game. And I don't think LeVert crushes him there. But you do have to see a little bit of sticker shock that he's almost $10,000, and LeVert is not just some average role player. He's going to be heavily involved in this offense. So what are you doing with Sabonis and then the peripheral options for this Pacer squad?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest issue for me with Sabonis is just the salary. I do think that what we'll see going forward with LeVert here is that you see more, you'll probably see a few more games where Sabonis isn't quite as high a usage guy, but I think that it'll still, kind of even out. Like, I don't think LeVert helps Sabonis, but I don't think he makes too much of a negative impact. If you look at the games that Sabonis played with Oladipo and Brogdon this year, basically just using Oladipo as a proxy for LeVert, another high usage guy that has the ball in his hands a lot, still a 24.8% usage rate for Sabonis, still averaged 1.3 fantasy points per minute. So it's another mouth to feed, but I still think Sabonis gets his more often than not. I'm not really concerned about LeVert hurting him. It's more so just that I don't know where I'm finding the money to pay $9,600 for Sabonis on this slate. It's just he's really, really good, but he's so close in salary to guys like Luka and LeBron and all of these other payoff options that it's just so hard to get there, I think.
Yeah, and the Denver Nuggets over the last month playing at a bottom 10 pace, pretty much one possession more than the Mavs, who are playing at the slowest pace in the league. The Nuggets defense started off really ugly this season, but the last month they're middle of the road, so it's not exactly a great matchup. It's a pretty easy spot to avoid. What about Jokic on the other side of this one against the Pacers?
I love Jokic. I when I said that Harden was the second or third guy for me, Jokic was the one that was up there with him. I think center, again, it's tough to pay up tonight because there's so many good value options, whether it's Len or Jordan or Zeller or Holmes or whoever. But the top tier of center is basically just Jokic, or it is just Jokic. Like, you're not competing with Embiid. You're not competing with any of these other top end guys. There's no Towns. The mid-range isn't that great either. So I think that, if you can get up to Jokic, he's a phenomenal option. He's averaging 36 minutes per game. He averages 1.67 fantasy points per minute. The Pacers aren't the worst matchup in the world. Like, everything looks really, really good for Jokic. It really just comes down to, I think it's going to be difficult to get both of Giannis and Jokic in lineups unless you're making, some weird risky plays, which is fine in tournaments. But I think it'll be kind of difficult to do that. And because of their positions, I do think Giannis is better than Jokic.
Okay. So your favorite three top price players are Giannis, Jokic, and Harden?
Yeah. And like I said, if I can't afford Harden, Doncic is perfectly fine.
All right. Well, what about the rest of Denver? We talked about Jokic, who's always the first guy we've got to cover here. Then you have Murray and Porter and guys like Barton and Millsap, and you have no Monty Morris today. Gary Harris remains out. What type of impact does that have on value? And are there any non-Jokic guys that you like against Indy?
Not really. I mean, I think that you'll see more minutes from Will Barton. He played 36 minutes last game, but we know he hasn't really been that productive this season because he, normally in previous years, he kind of had that Lou Williams role off the bench, whereas now he's playing so many minutes alongside Murray and Jokic that he really has to take a back seat there. Michael Porter doesn't help him either. He's cheap enough where you certainly can get some in tournaments, just, expecting him to play 34 plus minutes at a weak position. He's perfectly fine, but doesn't really stand out. Porter's more expensive than I really want to pay for. Jamal Murray is always fine in tournaments, but doesn't really stand out. It's kind of similar to, Dallas, I think, where Jokic really, really stands out here. If you want some Murray or Barton in tournaments, there's nothing wrong with that. But I don't think anything else really stands out.
Okay. Steven, thank you for the super chat. He says, how are we feeling about Quickly? Steve, I tell you what, this much. I'll answer your question, but to save you some money for next time, even though we appreciate it, on the left side of your screen, you can always just bring that back and go over to that New York and Brooklyn game. Maybe you're trying to get through everything. You don't have time to rewind. But if you guys miss any games, you think you missed anything you want to hear us hit on, we try to get to everything. That's why we've got the games list on the left side of the screen. And our guy, Jordan Klein, putting in the work behind the scenes, doing a great job producing as always.
One other thing to mention from
well, hold on. He said, how are you feeling about Quickly? Obvious answer is like him a lot.
Yeah. Quickly a lot.
Okay, go ahead.
One thing to mention from Denver here, we had that long conversation about Magruder in tournaments. 18% ownership going to Magruder, 13 to 14 going to Campazzo. I was going to say Campazzo on DraftKings is certainly someone you could use as a pivot away from Magruder.
Okay. Anything else in this game?
Nope.
Justin says, sweatshirt and Iverson signed jersey in the background, straight street cred. That's awesome. It's one of the better comments I've seen in a while. Memphis and Phoenix. Then we got Lakers and Golden State. Got about 6 minutes to make this happen. So what I'll do when we put ourselves in precarious situations like this, Adam, is throw this one over to you. Be concise, but make sure we get everything in there. What are your thoughts? Memphis Grizzlies 7-point dogs, 227 total in the desert.
This is another game where for the total, I'm kind of surprised how little interest I have, especially, the Memphis side, I think is really difficult to get to. Joval is fine at 7,600, averages 1.3 fantasy points per minute. So he gives you a little bit higher ceiling than a lot of the other mid-range guys. Typically he's going to play around 30 minutes, but not a very good matchup against Phoenix. Morant's salary is increased enough to where I'm not really interested in going there in this difficult matchup. Dylan Brooks, Kyle Anderson, all expensive enough. I'm not really that interested. Justice Winslow is out. I don't really know exactly what that's going to do to the rotation, but I think that maybe you get a little bit more playing time for DeAnthony Melton. He's expensive enough where I don't really think it makes him a priority, but maybe something to keep an eye on. But overall, nothing really from the Memphis side that I feel really good about. The Phoenix side's a little bit more interesting. They are favored here. Chris Paul's really cheap on FanDuel at 6,800. He's averaged 1.15 fantasy points per minute in games with Booker this year. So I think he looks like a pretty good point guard option on FanDuel specifically. Booker, really difficult to get to on FanDuel since he's a shooting guard. Difficult to get to on DraftKings at 8K as well, but does have a high ceiling. One guy that's showing up in a lot of my lineups, though, especially on DraftKings, is Mikal Bridges. And it's not that I feel great about him. It's just that I expect him to play around 34 minutes. He averages about 0.85 fantasy points per minute, and he's a small forward, which is really valuable on this slate. So just as a last guy in that kind of helps you round out lineups, I think Mikal Bridges is pretty useful.
All right. Our sponsor, SuperDraft, got the 6K up top NBA jump shot today, 30,000 guaranteed. They just partnered with Caesars, right? And they got an amazing Caesars rewards program. But the biggest thing is they're looking to expand, which means that there's going to be a ton of overlay going forward, right? In the foreseeable future. Take advantage of that. Just when you have these opportunities, you got to take them. Maybe you got in early in the crypto space. You got in early in Top Shots. Granted, might not be to the same magnitude, but when there are spots to make money and people aren't there yet, like this, where you only have 324 entries out of 1,933 entries right now, and it locks at 8 Eastern. So you've got an hour after the first lock on DraftKings and FanDuel to come and make these lineups with the very cool multiplier mode that they have over there at SuperDraft. You got free projections at Awesemo.com today. No reason not to do so. And if that's not convincing you, you will get $50 free when you deposit $50 or more using the promo code AWESEMO21, AWESEMO21, all one word. Download it in the App Store, excuse me, or go to superdraft.io. Again, this overlay is pretty wild today. 6K up top. There's 400 out of almost 2,000. I'm not a fortune teller, but I can't imagine this fills. When you got overlay opportunities like this, take them and get your free 50 when you use the promo code AWESEMO21, superdraft.io, or check it out in the App Store. All right, Adam, let's wrap this one up, and then we'll turn it over to the Live Before Lock crew. We've got Josh Engleman and Greg Ehrenberg following this one up, taking you up to 7 p.m. tip. Lakers, LeBron James, questionable, actually probable. 224 total, Lakers laying 2.5 on the road. What are we doing here?
Yeah, so we have LeBron.
Oh, and Gasol is out, sorry.
Yeah, Gasol out. Alex Caruso also out, which does make Talen Horton-Tucker kind of interesting in tournaments. He's risky. You're probably getting 18 to 20 minutes, but that's another guy that you could use in tournaments to get away from Magruder. As far as LeBron goes, I think he's actually showing up in a lot more lineups for me on DraftKings than I anticipated, just because he has forward eligibility. If you're just looking at projections and range of outcomes, I would rather get to any of, Jokic, Harden, Doncic, Giannis, all these guys. But as far as, building an entire lineup, LeBron actually ends up being really, really valuable because he is a little bit less expensive than Luka, but I also can roster him at forward, which is really valuable. So I think he helps out a lot in roster construction on DraftKings. Montrezl Harrell is another interesting center option, a pretty small Golden State front court. Harrell's minutes have been all over the place, but he has produced at a high rate without Anthony Davis this year, almost 1.2 fantasy points per minute. You've gotten 32 and 33 minutes in his last 2 games. I expect that he'll be able to stay on the floor again against Golden State tonight. So he looks like a pretty good option. So LeBron, the priority. Harrell is a good center play, I think. And then going to either Horton Tucker or KCP in tournaments, if you are looking for a little bit lower owned guy than Magruder, I think is perfectly fine.
Do you think Harrell should have more than 9% ownership, or is that price point up north of 6K kind of pulling it back?
I think it's the number of options around him. Like, I think he's a very good play. I don't think he's drastically different than Rashawn Holmes at his salary. Valanciunas a little bit more expensive, Zeller a little bit less expensive. There's just so many guys in that
Makes
price
sense.
range.
Any additional thoughts for the Warriors closing out this one tonight?
Yeah, I mean, nothing too exciting here. Draymond Green coming off of a monster game yesterday against Utah certainly has a high ceiling.
His former self. Sorry, not to cut you off, but he's had a few games recently where you look at him and it reminds you of like 2015, 2016 Dre.
Yeah, he's been playing really, really well. And I think that you can go back to him in tournaments here. He's reasonably priced. He's a forward. Doesn't stand out as like an optimal play, but does have a very high ceiling, no doubt about it. Andrew Wiggins, similar, like really inexpensive, doesn't do much like productivity wise, but should play big minutes at a cheap price tag. Steph Curry, clearly the guy that you're looking to first. The problem is just that on DraftKings, he's not that much less expensive than a lot of point guards that I would rather roster that just average, 0.2 to 0.25 fantasy points per minute more than Curry. On FanDuel, I think it should be a little bit easier to get to him at only 9,400.
Okay. And Ryan says, no mention of Kuzma. Really? Well, he's getting like 1% ownership right now. Last I checked at him.
Yeah, I don't know. Why would I be mentioning Kuzma?
I don't know. $6,000. That's 3% now. Yeah, but not all that much. Top options from this game other than LeBron. Are there any?
I mean, Harrell. And then, again, I think that if you want to get creative in tournaments, Horton Tucker over Magruder is not a bad idea.
And for anyone that wasn't able to check out the entire show, first of all, stick around for Live Before Lock. They'll get you covered. Give me your top high-end option and your top value play for today's slate. Talking any format, just overall top option, top tier, and value.
Giannis top option, LeVert top value on FanDuel, quickly right behind him. In terms of point per dollar, I guess Magruder on DraftKings, even though I want to throw up saying that.
All right. Well, I will be back here tomorrow with Adam to tell you how Alex Len ruined my life for what feels like the millionth time. Hit us up on Twitter at Awesemo DFS, at Awesemo_com. Sorry, at ShipMyMoney DFS, and myself at Laffy_D, LOUGHY_D. It's been fun. As always, we'll see you back here tomorrow on the Deeper Dive presented by SuperDraft. Later, boys.
See you guys.
What's up, fella?
What's up, bro?
New tunes.
See you in the morning.
Yes. Oh, yeah, that's right. Have some fun.
Love the PC hat, Jordan. A Florida State undefeated shirt. Cornering the market.
Yeah.
Braves shorts. Football team socks.
You doing a show or just listen to music today?
I'd rather listen to music. And we are live. Welcome to NBA Live Before Lock. It is Monday, March 15th. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Greg Ehrenberg. We are brought to you by SuperDraft, the presenting sponsor of this show for today. Let's just start here because we've got a bit of a fun slate to talk about. It's kind of hard, and the value is on guys that I don't really appreciate rostering, at least for the most part. But Greg, how you doing today?
Yeah, so I actually really like this slate a lot. I think it's a vastly different slate for FanDuel and DraftKings. I actually prefer it a little bit for FanDuel to DK. There are some really interesting chalk plays. I think the Knicks minutes are super difficult to parse. I think that I wish that some of the ownership from earlier in the day held until now. Because like I did the strategy show this morning, I was like, oh my God, Drew Holiday, like 13% ownership on this slate. I was like, that's like the best pivot play of the season. And then his ownership came up. But either way, I do like this slate a lot for FanDuel. I think it's all right for DK also, but FanDuel in particular, this is actually one of my favorite slates in a while.
Yeah, very, very different across both sites. FanDuel, we've got the quickly conundrum. We've got Karis LeVert priced like, I don't know, like he has to play post-surgery or something. I can't really figure this one out. We're going to touch on all of it. We've got about an hour. So I'd say 2,700 people, 550 likes. They're probably just a lot of sympathy likes to Laffy for him being back. We're celebrating the birth of his child. And I'll give him those likes for today. I won't make too big of a fuss, but don't be afraid to hit that thumbs up button for us. I don't have a sympathy baby, but I don't know. I'll probably have like a burrito in the next couple of days, and I'll be giving birth to a big one after that. Let's just dive into it now. Let's talk a little bit about this slate, and we'll start on the guard side. And we have some pretty consistent chalk across FanDuel and DraftKings, but I want to get your thoughts. If you're looking at the chalk on both sites, who do you agree with? Who do you disagree with? Where are you going tonight at guard?
All right, so let's start with somebody who isn't chalk on DraftKings, but is on FanDuel, and that's Chris Paul. The price point is definitely appealing, but the ownership is so high, and I don't think it's warranted given what we've seen from him and Devin Booker on the court at the same time. So once again, like Chris Paul's in my player pool. I don't have an issue with him. In cash games, I think he's a pretty strong consideration just considering what his ownership and his price point is on FanDuel. But also think there's a whole bunch of guys priced around him that make for stronger options than him. So like Malcolm Brogdon is only $100 less. And considering the ownership between the two, I'm overweight to Brogdon. I'm underweight to Chris Paul. I have them kind of about even in terms of how much exposure I have to them, except it's just given the differences in ownership, I'm going to be pulling more for Brogdon tonight than Drew Holiday, who's pretty popular in the lower end. But even so, I think that Drew Holiday is just to me one of the best plays on the slate on FanDuel at 5,800. I even like him on DraftKings at 6,500. But considering the way that his minutes are trending up, I think that he's somebody who's chalk that should be even higher owned on FanDuel. I think he should be higher owned on DraftKings. And then Chris Paul, I think, should be a little bit lower owned.
Liverpool final score 1-0. Boom. Finally get a W.
I thought you were excited about Drew Holiday.
I am excited about Drew Holiday. I'm so excited about Drew Holiday. In fact, that he's my highest owned point guard as of right now. So we are off to a pretty good start. Happy to be getting there. And I fully agree with your Chris Paul take. Chris Paul, my biggest fade in our strategy syllabus for today. So you're just poaching my takes left and right so far. I like it.
Yeah, well, I can't even, although you did do a show before, and I was going to say I did the strategy show, but you do your show like 4 a.m. or something like that. So
beat you to it.
Nobody's beating you to the punch.
No, I assume you just took notes for everything that I said.
I slept.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I slept. I took a nap from like 1 o'clock till I don't know what time I woke up, and then I watched Liverpool. So anyway, that's where we're at. We've got other pay up options at the point guard spot. Luka, Russell Westbrook. How you feeling about those two guys? Any interest, or are they just? I don't want to say just guys on this slate, but they're just guys you get to that you pay up for. Nothing great, nothing bad.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of just guys. I'm actually fairly underweight to the field on Russell Westbrook. It's weird that he's the same exact price as Luka. Yeah. Luka, I have more interest in him on FanDuel than DK, just given what the price points are. Also, just the positional flexibility on DraftKings, where Luka's just kind of in a bowl with James Harden, Giannis, Jokic, and all those guys kind of priced similarly. And with all the positional flexibility, it's just which of these guys you think score the most fantasy points. And to me, Luka's behind all of those guys. But then on FanDuel, where he's cheaper, and then also different situation in terms of him as a pay up option. So I have more exposure to Luka than I do to Westbrook. But to your point, they are kind of just guys for me. Like, they're not guys that I am like heavily targeting. I'm slightly underweight to the field on both of them.
Yeah, neither one of them is my preferred pay up option for today. I have about 20% of Luka, about 10% of Russ right now. I haven't made any tweaks. Still waiting for another like 15 or 20 minutes or so before I really start changing the dials. Otherwise, I'm going to end up doing it twice. I assume that that's about where I end up. I'll probably be over the field to Jamal Murray like I am every other night. I will certainly be under the field to Chris Paul, barring any ownership. I'm going to slide us over to the shooting guard spot now, and let's just get the loveliness of FanDuel out of the way. Caris LeVert is 4,100 today on FanDuel. Played, I think, 26 minutes. It might have been 27, something in that neighborhood in that first one. I'd be very surprised if he played less than that here. Is there anything to even really talk about?
The only thing to talk about is that the game got delayed by an hour because there's a really bad snowstorm and the Pacers' flight got delayed. So that was one thing that for a second gave me pause. I was like, that's weird. And I actually did bet the Nuggets based on that news because it seems like the Pacers are going right from the airport to the stadium. So that's more of a betting angle than an actual DFS angle. But yeah, Caris LeVert is 99% owned for me on FanDuel. And frankly, I ran the lineups. I was like, why is he not 100%? But yeah, 99%. Caris LeVert is my highest owned player I've had this year since Caris LeVert. Remember, we had that slate earlier in the year where both of us had him 100%. It was a game where all of the Nets guys were out and just Caris LeVert was like 5,400 or something like that. It was a massive chalk play. So yeah, Caris LeVert, my highest owned player since Caris LeVert.
Yeah, I don't see a lot of downside for that one. We're obviously going to lead into quickly, but for LeVert, I mean, even if he does just play the same minutes and he gets 27, it's going to be pretty hard for him to go out there and hang like a full bagel on you at the 4,100 number. Whereas the upside for LeVert is he plays 30 minutes and he plays like Caris LeVert when he's hot on offense and drops, 45 fantasy points. And he's very clearly a necessity. Quickly, on the other hand, I actually have projected higher than Caris LeVert, but boy, oh boy, am I terrified to roster him.
It's very weird to me that they're projected for about the same ownership. I just think LeVert is so much safer. And this isn't to say that Quickly is a bad play, but he is so popular. I have him in about a third of my lineups on FanDuel.
Same.
And I don't know what the hell to do with his minutes because I'm just going to bring this up really quick. And people will ask me, like, how many minutes is player X going to play? And the last 4 games, Quickly has played 29 minutes, 13, 24, and 33. And I think that we're going to find out pretty quickly in this game whether he's a good player or not, because it's going to be based entirely on whether he gets on the court or not. And when because when he's on the court, he's a great fantasy producer. He's one of the best players on the Knicks, but his minutes get jerked around so much by Tom Thibodeau that it's really hard to feel confident in him. So I have him in about a third of my lineups in both FanDuel and DraftKings. I think he's a good play. I think you should play him in cash games. I'm just a little light on him in tournaments because I think there's so much variance with his playing time.
We're on the exact same page here. 33% is where I have him right now. 32% is where he came out of my Sims. It's just, he can realistically play 18 minutes today. And at no point in time would I be surprised by that outcome.
No, remember, there was a slate where both of us were on him a decent amount. He ended up playing well, but it was a game where we got really lucky because
he dropped like 20 real points in 5 minutes.
Yeah, and Thibodeau just didn't play him until the fourth quarter. Then the game was kind of a blowout, and he left him in at the end. But yeah, there was a game where I'll try to find his box.
He actually took him back out, put Rose back in the blowout, and then put him back in again. It was the night that Alec Burks hit like 5 threes in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and it was the night that Alec Burks had like 30 fantasy points in the fourth quarter. By the way, I think Burks is a really strong pivot on FanDuel off of Quickly. On DraftKings, the ownership's already there for Burks. It's really interesting to me that Burks is 4,100 on DraftKings, 4,100 on FanDuel, 4,400 on DraftKings, but has like twice the ownership on DK. And I understand why to an extent, because on FanDuel, I think most people are just going LeVert and Quickly and moving on to other positions. But yeah, I think that Burks is a really strong pivot on FanDuel, and I'm about double a field on him.
Any Ntilikina thoughts?
He's not in my player pool. If he was a different position, I think there'd be a chance that I would get to him, but not with point guard eligibility.
Okay, I don't have him either, but you need to throw it out there because obviously if Quickly doesn't see the time, I assume that Ntilikina is getting every single one of those minutes. So it's at least an interesting GPP pivot, but I don't think that he's good enough to really get there, especially with Facundo Campazzo at 3,600 just being better than him.
So the starts for Quickly for Ntilikina this year, he has played 7 minutes and 25 minutes.
Of course he has. It's miserable. So pay up options at the shooting guard spot. We've got James Harden at 11,300. Not really picking up all that much ownership. I'm not very surprised by that. He is not my preferred pay up option. He's still James Harden. So like any James Harden that I get to, I'm always pretty happy about. Bradley Beal at 9,800 doesn't really feel like my guy today. And then there aren't really any other pay up options at shooting guard. Do you have interest in James Harden? Is it Paul George, Devin Booker? I mean, $7,900 Paul George, I thought was going to be like aggressively chalked today. And he's just sort of like owned, I guess.
Well, it's hard for anybody to be chalk when Karis LeVert and Quickler are each in 50% of the lineups. Like there's only so much other ownership to go around. I'm underweight. And also, I mean, like I said, I have LeVert in 99% of my lineup. So just with that being the case, there's only so much other ownership for me to have at shooting guard. So James Harden, I didn't really get to on FanDuel or DraftKings. The Knicks are a very difficult matchup this year for DFS. They're playing at the slowest pace in the NBA. Their defense is good with Tibbs. They're 5th in the NBA in defensive efficiency. So, I mean, Harden's about as matchup proof as players come, except still when there's going to be not that many possessions in the game relative to other Nets games, that's going to cap his ownership. I mean, his upside a little bit. And there's just so many good plays at shooting guard that I only have single digit ownership to James Harden. Paul George, I'm about even with the field on. I'm overweight to Devin Booker on FanDuel just because of the ownership on Chris Paul and really no other reason.
No, I like that thought process as well. One guy that I'm expecting to be slightly overweight to the field on is Andrew Wiggins. I don't really have much to back it up with, but he's only 8% owned. And I think that it should be like sort of double that. So nobody that I'm just hitching my wagon to, but he is the guy that stands out in my rankings. I have a tier of LeVert at the top, quickly sort of in his own second tier. And then Booker, Harden, Paul George, and Wiggins, all relative to salary, are looking pretty similar. Wiggins just doesn't appear to be getting that ownership. So that's just one of those large field GPP spots that I'm getting to. Any other guards that you want to make sure we touch on?
More of a DraftKings specific play. Well, actually a totally DraftKings specific play, but a Reggie Bullock, who I don't project for all that many fantasy points, except he's very cheap. And we have Derrick Rose not expected to play for the Knicks. We have Alfred Payton not expected to play for the Knicks. So there's just minutes to go around in the Knicks backcourt. The same reason that Alec Burks is popular on DraftKings, the same reason that Quickly is popular on both sites. There's minutes up for grabs, and there's been like an oddly little amount of value that's opened up on this slate. So it's hard to find guys to save salary with. So players like Rodney Magruder makes it into my DraftKings player pool. Reggie Bullock does. And it's just because of wanting to fit like guys like Giannis and Jokic into my lineups. Not because I think any of these guys have massive games, but I mean, if you get, like 20 fantasy points out of Rodney Magruder, 20 fantasy points out of Reggie Bullock, that's going to be important if Giannis goes out and scores 65, if Jokic scores 60 plus. And I just don't see other ways to really reliably save salary.
Guys, this is not the final show we will have today on the Awesemo.com YouTube channel. We ain't done. At 9:30 p.m. Eastern time, NBA late live before lock, the Swap and Spit show. They're splitting it up. We're changing up the game a little bit. So they're going to go for the first half hour up until the 10 o'clock lock. Then they're going to go another additional half hour, from what I understand. That's how it was communicated to me earlier. I think I'm getting this right. But anyway, they're overlapping lock a little bit, but they will be doing the run up to the late games. That will be Spags and Emacs. So tune into that one. Plus, we got some free content on the website today. NBA player projections, free today. I assume if you're watching this show right now, that would be very interesting to you. NHL ownership projections, also free today. I assume if you are watching this, that is less interesting to you, but it should be interesting because you just kind of know what we're offering to everybody out there. SuperDraft NBA projections, also free today because they're the presenting sponsor and we got to give them some goods. So go check that out too. And let us slide on over to the forward spot. We're going to start it off the same way we did before. Favorite forwards on the slate, least favorite forwards on the slate. Anybody you see in getting too much ownership, not enough ownership. Totally open to you. Where do you want to land?
All right. So this is where some of my lineups get a little funky because I like Kyle Kuzma tonight. And he's picking up almost no ownership. And that's one of the main reasons I like him. The other thing too is his minutes are way up as of late. And this is going to also parlay into, it's kind of hard for me to avoid talking about him here, but also I like Montrezl Harrell for this slate.
Okay.
And the reason being is you wouldn't think this is important. I brought this up earlier when I was doing the strategy show with Kaufman. Jared Dudley's out, and you would think Jared Dudley, what does he matter? But he's somebody who the Lakers were playing, 10 to 14 minutes per game. And right now it looks like all of those minutes are going to Harrell and Kuzma. at least that's what we've seen from the Lakers over the last couple of games, because Kuzma, the last couple of games, he played, even though he came off the bench last game, he played 31 minutes last game. He played 34 minutes the game before. Montrezl Harrell, also somebody who comes off the bench, but he also, there's no Jared Dudley. They played some small ball lineups with him at center, and then also Marc Gasol's out. So the last couple of games, Montrezl Harrell's played 33 and 32 minutes, and neither of these guys are really picking up any ownership. So I don't look at Kyle Kuzma and be like, oh, this guy's going to destroy and score 40 fantasy points again. But for somebody who last I looked was picking up like 3% ownership on FanDuel, maybe
I think
gone
it's
up a
6
little.
now.
Even at 6 though, I'm about 3x the field on him. I just think given what his minutes have been lately, and that Kuzma's always been a guy who, as much as he's been controversial in terms of being an actual on court and what he brings to an NBA team, he's always been a fairly decent fantasy producer, and he takes shots when he's on the court. So with the minutes going up, it looks like I think that he's somebody who's going a little under-owned.
Your Kyle Kuzma is my Draymond Green tonight. Obviously slightly different salary tier, but the guy that I'm well above the field on, that's 6% owned, is Draymond Green. News came in while you were talking. Bertans and Howell Neto both cleared to play tonight, so they are in against the Wizards.
Cool. So that's going to prevent me from rostering any crappy Washington players that I would have regretted.
Yeah, I have 1 share of Bertans right now. I assume I don't have any shares of Neto. That would be correct. So hopefully that's just totally meaningless to me. Giannis Antetokounmpo is my second most exposed player on this slate. He is my preferred pay-up option. What say you about the Greek Freak today?
Yeah, he's my favorite pay-up option on the slate. It's hard to get away from him when you consider the really strong matchup against the Wizards and the pace of play in this game. It's the total last I looked was up to 243 points, I think, and getting wider. The total open for this game at 238.5, and it just continues to be bet up. So it's a game that we're going to expect a ton of points to score. I think a lot of people will look at this game and just be like, oh, blowout risk. But I mean, the Bucks are favored by 8 points. It's the same spread that the Nets are favored by over the Knicks. It's about the same spread as the Suns over the Grizzlies. So if you're not afraid of a blowout with Chris Paul going up against Memphis, then you shouldn't really be afraid of a blowout with Giannis going up against the Wizards in the spot, because the games have the same spread. It's not to say that it's impossible, but the likelihood of it happening is about the same in both games. So Giannis, I think, is the best pay-up option on the slate, and I actually don't really think anybody's particularly close to him.
You and I are on the exact same side of the coin again today. I'm hoping that this is leading us to glory. When I took my nap today, I was looking through some podcasts that were good for sleeping. I was basically just looking for some sort of monotone voice that I could listen to. I don't know, something like Laffy's. Anyway, I found some random sleep podcasts, and the first one that they gave me was like how to visualize winning the lottery. So that felt close enough to me, like DFS. So I'm hoping I planted some seeds in how to win DFS today just from my nap earlier. That's the hope. We'll see if that really works out the way that I want it to.
Hey, that's all visualization and DFS winnings come via naps. That is well backed up by research. By the way, players that I think are overowned, and this is also somebody who I have no clue what the hell to do with his minutes. Keldon Johnson, who his minutes are just never there. And I understand the Spurs have played some not competitive games lately, but the last 5 games, Keldon Johnson's played 11 minutes, 22, 22, 23, 24. The last 2 games were decided by 30. How many points? They lost by 35 points last game. And then 2 games ago, they lost by 37 points. So it stands to reason that Keldon Johnson probably would have played more minutes had the game been closer, but I don't know how many more minutes. And considering, especially on DraftKings, how he is, once again, he's in my player pool, but I'm not getting to quite the amount of ownership that he's at because he is one of the most popular plays on the slate on DK.
Keldon Johnson was in my play less group on my tweet for my updated sim results on both FanDuel and DraftKings. So once again, you are just poaching every take that I've had today. We should just do this show solo, man. We don't even need me. I'm just coming in here just agreeing with you over and over and over again. I'm boring today.
You know, I do find that on the shows I do with you, I probably agree with you more than anybody else to do shows with. More often than not, I do think we're on the same page with a lot of things.
Is that a good thing?
It could be. I mean, I didn't hear what you said about Kuzma, so maybe that's something we're a little different on.
I'm just neutral to Kuzma.
Okay.
I don't have any issue with that take. I got him projected for 26 fantasy points. He's in like 6% of my lineup, just like the public. So I'm basically just holding hands with the public. No problem. That's a stand that I would happily get to. No problems getting to a 30-minute a game Kyle Kuzma. That's for sure. The guy that I'm a little confused for ownership, similar story to Keldon Johnson. Mikal Bridges at 5K, about 25% owned at the small forward spot on FanDuel. That's the most owned small forward right now, and I don't really understand why that's happening.
So I actually am getting to Bridges about even with the field, and it's mostly because I don't like any of the small forwards all that much. Okay. That's really the main reason. Like, there's no small forward I look at and is like, oh yeah, that's the guy. Whereas Mikal Bridges, at least the 5,000 price point, it's appealing to me given that, number one, his price just randomly dipped a ton. He was 5,700 a week ago. Yeah. And now all of a sudden he's gone down to 5,000. The minutes are still there. Over the last 4 games, he's played 36, 27, 39, and 32 minutes. So I feel pretty comfortable about him playing over 30 minutes in this game. And just with the price dip, I think that there's so many small forwards I do not feel confident in this slate that I think he has a pretty high floor and he's not going to kill a lot of lineups.
I get it. He's like in this middle. You explained him perfectly. I have, let's see, Kawhi, Middleton, Hayward, Porter, Barnes, Bridges, Richardson, Barton, Oubre, Sadiq Bey, all as basically the same guy at small forward, just in different sort of tiers. So this is more of a case of me he's the most extremely high owned guy. I'm just naturally not getting there. I'm getting to like more Michael Porter Jr. as a pay up to be contrarian option, Josh Richardson, Will Barton, Kelly Oubre. These guys are all in like the single digits of ownership. I'm taking everything that was going to Bridges and just distributing it to those guys.
Did you mention RJ Barrett there?
He's just higher than all of those guys. He's my number 2 small forward, just behind LeBron James.
Yeah, Barrett's been surprisingly effective recently, not just from a DFS standpoint, but from an actual NBA standpoint also. Like, he's making threes now, and that was something he's never done ever. Like, he didn't do it in college. He didn't do it his rookie season. He didn't do it for the first month and a half of this season. Now, all of a sudden, RJ Barrett's making threes, and it's done a couple things. Number one, Tibbs is starting to give him a little bit more playing time because he went from being a guy who played a ton of minutes to start the season to a guy who was playing less minutes. Now his minutes are starting to creep back up as he's starting to shoot better. And he also looks like a viable NBA player, which didn't look to be the case for a very long time. And his fantasy production, somebody else who it's been really stable. And I think at the small forward position, at least for this slate, I'm valuing floor a little bit more than I normally would, just because I don't think any of these guys have a massive amount of ceiling.
Okay. Any other guys that you're looking at their ownership and you're kind of curious how it's happening? Both positively and negatively.
Let's see. Nobody really crazy. Keldon Johnson was the one that stood out to me the most.
Okay.
How about for you? Is there anybody you look at and you mentioned Bridges also. Yeah. Is there anybody else you look at and think it's way off?
I don't want 11. I don't really need 11% of Dario Saric.
Okay.
I don't really need 18% Bobby Portis. That's not totally for me either. That's probably it when it comes to forwards.
Yeah, I was looking mostly at the small forwards. See, I'm going to just scan the power forward ownership to see if there's anybody who looks way off. I agree. Bobby Portis, that's a high number. Dario Saric, that is also a high number. Jeremy Grant, I think that's probably a little bit too low for him. Jeremy Grant, who I've rostered a ton of this year, and even though he's pretty popular with ownership in the teens, I still think that's not high enough for Jeremy Grant, considering, number one, he's going up against the Spurs, who have number one, the Spurs have been terrible lately, but also they don't have guys left. Other than LaMarcus Aldridge, who's, out right now, but because he's away from the team, but DeMar DeRozan's still away, and they've just been a mess lately. So Jeremy Grant, I think that he's going a little bit underrepresented, even though he's popular. It's not popular enough, in my opinion.
Okay.
Harrison Barnes, double-digit ownership on DraftKings. That's a little surprising to me.
That's a heavy number.
And yeah, Dario Saric also 18% owned on DraftKings. That is wildly high.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one. Do need to touch on the Super Chat, mostly because it shuts me out. Big one from Raboshua. Thanks for all the great advice, especially Josh, who has answered literally hundreds of questions in premium office hours. People should sub for that alone. Couldn't agree more. Now, is it correct to roster Giannis at 40% over Harden at 13% on a FanDuel GPP? Is Giannis 3 times more likely to go off? I think he's significantly more likely to be needed at the power forward spot than James Harden is at 11-3 to be needed at the shooting guard spot.
So here's the big difference is that we have Karis LeVert at shooting guard. Like to me, the odds of Karis LeVert not having a good game are so low. Like it would just take such an outlier thing to happen. Like I think there's almost a better chance of that game being canceled due to snow than Karis LeVert just totally busting. So I think that Karis LeVert, because of where he's priced, and then also Emmanuel Quickley, who even though both of us think there's a good amount of variance with his playing time, the upside for him is very substantial. And considering the price points on LeVert and Quickley, if both of those guys score like 30 fantasy points, which is not a crazy outcome, there's a pretty good chance that each of them land in the optimal lineup. And then that makes Harden not really that important. Whereas the FanDuel position, like we just talked about, Dario Saric is popular today because power forward is so crappy. Bobby Portis is popular today because power forward is so crappy. So therefore, if you get 50 or let's say 60 fantasy points from Giannis, is way more valuable than 60 fantasy points from James Harden.
No, we're on the same page. So the question actually asked, what was the end of it? Is Giannis 3 times more likely to go off? So I have Giannis in the optimal lineup 41% of the time. I have James Harden in there 14% of the time. That is 2.93 times as much as James Harden. So no, not 3x, but if we round that to a whole number, yes, it is basically spot on that mark. I thought that was kind of interesting.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, I think he just pulled a very good over/under number off the top of his head.
Yeah, and it looked pretty solid to me. I'm in the midst of bumping Harden actually, just a little bit to get him in a couple more lineups. Similar story for Paul George. I'm just a little bit lighter on those two guys than I really want to. Power forward is crappy. Giannis, Randall, Zingas, Sabonis, Grant, Washington. How is that crappy? Super easy. Most of those guys aren't that great of plays today.
So, I mean, relative to the price point, like it's not to say that for this slate, these guys aren't good plays, but Julius Randle is 9,200, right? Yeah. And so I think that's about a fair price point. I have him projected for about 45.5 fantasy points off the top of my head. Compare that to the options we have at shooting guard. Karis LeVert, everybody has to project him to far exceed his salary point. Emmanuel Quickley, everybody has to project him to far exceed his salary point. There's nobody like that at the power forward position. Like, I agree with you relative to the context of this slate. Kristaps Porzingis is a good play. Julius Randle is a good play. Giannis is a very good play. But there's nobody who I just look at and be like, oh, this guy is going to be 6.5x his price tag.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's just the positional nature of shooting guard and power forward today are just sort of really changing up the way that I want to construct my lineups. So yeah. I don't really know. Like, that's really the only way for me to explain it at this point. Another super chat from Tab Jones. What's the word with Derek White? I don't know. I assume he's playing, I guess.
So Derek White, he's not on the injury report. Derek White has not played in the back-to-back this entire season. But with that said, the Spurs played yesterday. He's not on the injury report today, so I expect him to play. I did dial back his minutes a little bit. Like, I didn't give Derek White 32 minutes because they've been somewhat cautious with not only him, but everybody on that team. And the Spurs kind of seem like they're going nowhere at this point. So Derek White played really well the other day. I prefer him on DraftKings to FanDuel. He's somebody who I have a decent amount of on DK, where he is priced at, I think it was 5,000 off the top of my head. 5,200 for Derek White on DraftKings. So at 5,200, I do think he's one of the better mid-range plays on DraftKings. So I'm not exactly sure what the question is in terms of what's the deal with him, but not somebody I got to all that much on FanDuel. I did on DK just because of the price point and that it's kind of harder to find a whole lot of value there.
Okay. Yeah, we're looking at that in the same way. I'm really nervous about the Spurs in general. I just think that because they have so many games in the second half, we're just going to see Pop doing some more traditionally Pop type things with guys are just going to play 22 minutes instead of 26 or something like that. And it's going to be a little bit of a problem. So I am pretty happily getting away from most of San Antonio today. Any final thoughts at the forward spot?
Let me think. Is there anybody here that I did not bring up that I have? Randall, Sabonis. These are a bunch of guys that I'm just neutral to the field on. I'm curious, what is your thoughts on Sabonis going forward now that Karis LeVert seems to basically just be in the mix as a high usage guy with no real restriction? I mean, Karis LeVert had a 31.6% usage rate in his first game with the Pacers. I assume that is going to have to hurt Sabonis at least a little bit going forward.
It has to hurt every single person there. I assume it's also really terrible for Brogdon. I don't really see a scenario where this is good for any single person on the Pacers. And I assume that they are all a couple $100 overpriced for the next couple days.
Yeah, that is also how I feel. So I have 7% Sabonis on FanDuel, and it's really mostly because of the Levert factor. Like I've been really high on Sabonis. I feel like almost every slate this year until now.
I have 3.
Yeah, so I have twice as much as you, but that's not really saying much.
No, it's just not that kind of day, you know? Especially with Giannis and Randall on this slate, who I think are just significantly better plays than he is today. So to beat them both, I think is going to be a real problem.
Yeah, I agree with that. Just because we saw so much usage go to Levert in his first game.
I guess we probably need to do this before we keep it moving. Your thoughts on LeBron James, 10,500 at the small forward spot, a guy who I don't believe we mentioned, but he is my second favorite pay up spot.
I'm about neutral to him on FanDuel. I didn't really get to him on DraftKings. I actually have him a little bit. I think it's weird that on DraftKings, he has comparable ownership to Giannis and LeBron. To Giannis and Harden, and he's more popular than Jokic. And these are guys who, in about the same price tier, I project for a lot more fantasy points. For FanDuel, I don't even like him that much as a points per dollar play. It's just there's a lot of value at shooting guard, and like I said before, I think most of the small forwards kind of suck. So I think the 2 hardest positions to fill on FanDuel are both forward spots, small forward and power forward. So I have LeBron around 25% on FanDuel, but not even because I like him as a points per dollar option, just because I don't like other small forwards either.
Yeah, I got him at about 35 right now, and I'm actually pretty happy about that. We'll see how that shakes out as we get closer to lock. But we do need to keep this bad boy moving. It is time for me to do more back-end type stuff, like announce a promo that we've got going on, which would be Shamrock. You can get 50% off an Awesemo Plus weekly pass. That's $15 for full access to everything that we have: NBA, PGA, NHL, NASCAR, MMA, soccer, esports, college basketball projections for March Madness. We got all the good stuff. You use that promo code Shamrock, which will expire on Wednesday. It's only good for new subscribers. So if you're trying to dip your toe in the water, now is a good time to do it. SHAMROCK. Use that when checking out on an Awesemo Plus weekly package, and you can join up with us. But you should also join up with SuperDraft. That would be superdraft.io if you want to go to their website. It's a different mechanism. We're not worried about salaries. We're worried about multipliers. Very, very different in comparison. So for example, today, my number 1 SuperDraft play of the day is actually LeBron James, 1.05 multiplier projected for 58.9. You can get James Harden at a flat 1. Kyrie Irving, my 3rd best guy, 1.25 multiplier. We get the Emmanuel quickly is up at 1.7. So he could try to trim the gap between all of these guys. That allows Quickly to be my number 9 play on the slate. So you're building out your lineup a little bit differently. They've got a 30K jump shot with 6K going to first tonight. You can sign up using the promo code AWESEMO21, AWESEMO21. Get $50 free when you deposit $50 or more. You can get the app in the App Store, or you can just go to superdraft.io. That's SuperDraft, no limits, more winning. And we are on to the centers just as soon as everybody hits that like button, because we're up to 3,400 people now. Now the people they're here to see us. They're here to get the goods. So we're here to get those thumbs ups. All right, we got to talk a little bit about center. I'm going to need to talk a little bit about the guy that I'm going to have way too much of. Are you joining me on Alex Len Island tonight?
Oh, you know who I thought you were going to say was Miles Turner, because Miles Turner is somebody who I feel like you're habitually overweight to. So
yes.
when I looked at the FanDuel ownership, I was like, ooh, sub 1% on Miles Turner at 6,200. That is definitely somebody Josh is going to bring up at some point.
I have 0, so I'm sure he's going to block 8 shots.
Well, I have 1% of them, so I have infinitely more than you do.
Yes, you do. Is it Alex Len Day?
No, I hope not anyway.
I have more than I should.
I have, I didn't get to Len. It's so hard for me to parse the minutes between him and Robin Lopez. So I get that Alex Len started last game and played 33 minutes, but maybe I'll feel better if he starts again, then I'll upgrade him. Is he definitely starting?
He is starting. We have that lineup, starting lineup for we got it a while ago, actually. Starting lineup: Westbrook, Beal, Matthews, Rui, and Len. Came in at 523, actually.
All right. So, I mean, I'll upgrade him to get him to some of my lineups then, but it's so hard for me to trust the minutes. I mean, I know they were there last game. He played 33, but I still think Robin Lopez is going to be a factor in the rotation too. Actually, I mean, neither of them are popular. I was going to say if Len was popular, then I thought, well, Robin Lopez would make sense as a pivot, but I mean, neither of them are picking up ownership anyway.
So here is how I could pump everybody's brakes, because I assume people are going to think this is crazy. How many minutes do you think I have Alex Len projected for? I'm obviously leading you on this question.
All right. So I'm going to say 23.
You would actually be high. I have him, and not as high as me usually. I have him at 22 minutes. That is
wasn't
still
that far off,
making him the most efficient center play for me. I think that his minutes ceiling is significantly higher than 22. I'd be surprised if he played all that much less than 22 if he is now, since he is now starting. Could happen. Anything could happen as far as I'm concerned with Scotty Brooks. But I think Len is a really good conduit to open yourself up to more Giannis, more LeBron James, shares of James Harden if you need it. If you want to pay up to some of these point guards, whether that's Luka or De'Aaron Fox, Russell Westbrook, I like freeing up that salary today with Len at just $100 above the minimum, more than any reason, because we are projecting him at 4% ownership, which I honestly feel like I need to double just to calm myself down.
So here are his minutes and starts so far with the Wizards. He did play 33 last game. The games before as a starter, he played 21, 21, 20, and 8. Like, I think that's so bizarre that he started again and played 8 minutes. So yes. I don't feel comfortable in the minutes. I think just because I feel like you talked me into him a little bit, just from a standpoint of like, yes, he could play 21 and still be viable. There's still other centers that I like a lot more than him. Like, I feel a lot more comfortable even with James Wiseman at 3,900 than I do to Alex Len, just because I think that Wiseman, somebody who profiles is somebody who's going to be a really good points per minute fantasy producer this year. But I'm gonna add Alex Len to my player pool now because I didn't have any.
I just refreshed our ownership. He's less owned than when I started this conversation. 1.2%.
You talk people off him somehow.
That's why, yeah, why he's just giving out the reverse nuts. I don't understand how that's possible today. I really don't. I don't understand how he could possibly be 1% owned after seeing him play north of 30 minutes and being $100 north of the minimum and the starting center again today. That truly doesn't make sense to me. I'm not saying that he should be 30% owned or anything crazy. 1.2 just seems incorrect.
All right. So I had him for 18 minutes and I'm going to give him 21 and I'll see what that does for him in my player pool. Somebody who I mentioned before, just to circle back on, Montrezl Harrell, I think, is somebody else who is a really strong GPP play, although I have to see what his updated ownership is now. But at least earlier in the day, I thought he was going really overlooked for somebody who's always been a good points per minute fantasy producer. And it seems like the minutes are trending up.
He's chalk. He is the most. Well, I say chalk in that he is the most owned center, but he is 17% owned. So he's not exactly like, I can't call him chalk and Karis LeVert chalk today.
Yeah.
Two different things. I like Harrell. Yeah, he grades out as my number 3 center. If he is 17% owned, I'm a little bit more apprehensive, but as I don't think I'd be as likely to get over the field on him, but he's certainly one of the guys that I'm most exposed to at the center position that isn't named Alex Len.
All right. And then I can't bring up the most recent ownership because my, according to producer Jordan, I was lagging a little bit when I had too many tabs open before. So that was the number one sacrifice I made, was not refreshing the ownership tab every few minutes. What is
My Sacrifice? Great song, Creed.
What is Jonas Valanciunas at now?
Ownership?
Yes.
4.
Okay. So I'm about double the field on Valanciunas. Valanciunas' minutes have been way more significant post All-Star break. And I think there's a couple reasons for it. Number one, he's in general just played very well for the Grizzlies. Number two, also, we're coming down the stretch, and this is a team that's pushing for a playoff spot right now. I think that they were kind of unsure where they were going to stand earlier in the season. They were pretty conservative with Valanciunas' minutes, but now that they're in the mix for a play-in game, I mean, the minutes for Valanciunas the last 3 games, 32, 37, 30. If we're going to be consistently getting over 30 minutes from Valanciunas, he's going to have a bunch of really big games.
It's really weird to think back that he had a contract on the Raptors that they thought that they could not ever offload without like really taking a bite out of it. And now, multiple years later, on a new contract, a very, very solid starting center in the NBA. What a path.
Yeah, I mean, he was good with Toronto also. I remember there were so many years I drafted him in yearly leagues when I was really invested into doing season-long leagues. And I was always disappointed because the minutes were never there for him. And then kind of when I stopped playing as much yearly leagues, he became like a stud for yearly leagues.
That's generally how that stuff works out for you. I feel like this one is really going to hurt me. I'm taking a quick second away from centers to let you know that I am pretty massively under the field on Chris Middleton, and that feels like something that I should not be doing.
Oh no, because if you don't win it, if it's a Chris Middleton night and you don't win a GPP or you don't profit on a night, then that you have to like rewrite your entire character. Like you have to come on the air and say that Jimmy Butler's better than him if that's the case.
Yeah, I'm not liking it. I'm not liking it at all. We're projecting him as the most owned small forward play. How do you feel about that?
I don't hate it. I mean, it's a favorable price point, and they're playing against the Wizards, and there's going to be 1 billion points scored in that game.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think that he should be owned. He grades out as my 4th best small forward, but I think it's just a little bit easier to spread my exposure out at small forward, especially because I'm so concentrated at 2 of the other positions with Caris LeVert and with Giannis, and to a lesser extent, Alex Len, which I feel like I shouldn't say those 3 names in the same sentence.
I have 7% Alex Len now, by the way. And my center position on FanDuel is it is just a roll of the dice. This is a spray and pray of all sorts, the center position. It's a lot of guys that I like. Like, I think Pirtle's a good play. Jokic, Wiseman, Harrell, Valanciunas, Rashawn Holmes. Like, I think a lot of these guys are good plays, and it just sucks that we can only roster one of them on FanDuel, because I think these are some of the best plays on the slate just from a points per dollar basis.
Do you have any other interesting center takes that you want to touch on for the rest of this slate? We've got 15 minutes to go until lock, people.
Other interesting center plays. A little disappointed that the Montrezl Harrell ownership came up because it was not there earlier in the day. So actually, with that in mind, I'm probably going to lower him a little bit and bump up Jakob Poeltl, because Poeltl, he's somebody else who we've seen him play really big minutes in some competitive games the Spurs have played. The reason that hasn't been the case lately is because the Spurs have not played in competitive games. I said it before when I was talking about Keldon Johnson. They just lost to the Sixers 134-99. The game before they actually beat the Magic 104-77. So Poeltl played under 30 minutes in each of those games. But the first game out of the break where there was no LaMarcus Aldridge, Poeltl sucked that game, but he played 32 minutes. So Poeltl, who's in general a good fantasy producer, I think that we should expect somewhere in the neighborhood of 32 minutes in a competitive game.
Well, I hope that he doesn't play all that well today. Another guy that I talk about pretty regularly that I am not on tonight. So maybe, just maybe, I get to the promised land by doing the opposite of things that I speak about. What's more likely is that Chris Middleton goes for 70 fantasy points today, while I'm left holding 70% of Giannis.
I mean, I have a whole bunch of Giannis too. So I would. Do you have any sort of issue with having Giannis and Middleton in lineup together? I tried to prevent having Holiday, Middleton, and Giannis together, but I think all 3 of them are individually good plays.
No, not really. So let's see. That's going to be what? 7,400 and 11-1. So that's 18.5. So you're looking for about 108 between the 2 of them. I don't think like 65 and 40 doesn't seem like it'd be too crazy. That gets you to 105. Yeah,
that's reasonable.
Yeah. I got them projected together for 97.5. I don't think them getting, 10 plus more in the aggregate is all that hard. Then again, I also have my most owned point guard as Drew Holiday, but with him at 5,800, I'm a little bit less worried in that regard. And again, I only have 11% Chris Middleton, so I'm not really going to be running into that issue all that frequently. So you have 99 on LeVert, right?
Yeah, I have 99 on LeVert. Oh, let me see. I just updated it. Let me see if that changed the number.
I have 81.
All right, I have 98 now because I updated my lineup to get more Alex Len. So I think that getting to Len more just meant that I had more salary to use at shooting guard. Not that it matters all that much. I still have 98% Karis LeVert.
Super chat from Ryan. Creed or Nickelback? No brainer. Creed.
Yeah, I was about to say that before. I was like, did we really get a super chat asking us a Nickelback question? But yes, Creed.
I think that Nickelback gets a little bit too much strife in the grand scheme of things, but I mean, that first Creed album had some bangers on it.
Yeah, I mean, I was fine with Nickelback when I was in middle school and just didn't know any better. Maybe there's a little bit of nostalgia there, but I agree with you. I don't think Nickelback is quite as bad as people make them out to be, but definitely not preferred listening.
Look at this photograph. That's a jam, man. That's a jam. It just is. Let's take some questions.
It's good. I think we should, or we can do 11 minutes of you singing Nickelback songs.
I don't think that anybody wants to hear me sing anything for 11 seconds, let alone 11 minutes. Just not going to be the day for anybody. I have no singing ability whatsoever. I don't do karaoke. There's not enough. Only when I am unable to stand drunk will I be on a stage doing karaoke. And at that point in time, it's not going to go well. So shout out to whoever was in attendance when I tried to do Will Smith Miami, because that failed miserably. That is a song that people do not do for karaoke. And I very much learned my lesson the hard way. 10 minutes to go. Let's hit some questions. Premium Slack. I'm looking at you guys. I'm actually popping my head into that premium basketball channel right now. Drop your questions in YouTube chat. Maybe I'll answer one or two. Derek White at 14% ownership on FanDuel is terrifying.
In terms of that,
the fact that I don't have that.
Let's see, what do I have him on FanDuel? Well, I have very little Derek White on FanDuel. So yes, I do not have. I have him on DraftKings though, so that'll compensate for it a little bit. But yeah, I only have him 2% on FanDuel.
Ours says, how does Ellington being out affect Detroit? I don't think it affects them at all. I've had him out all day. I assume everyone else did.
So the way that it matters is on DraftKings, Rodney McGruder is a viable value option. Not somebody that you have to consider on FanDuel because of all the value we have there on FanDuel, but at least on DraftKings where it's a lot more difficult to find value because Karis LeVert isn't randomly priced at almost the minimum. I think that it makes McGruder viable, but also like Josh said, we were already expecting Ellington to not play.
Yeah, he was already out in all of the data. So it's not really changing anything site-wide or ownership-wise. He's been chalk and he should be. He was a top 5 play in the contenders this morning. You should watch those guys. They come out pretty early. Play more Josh Richardson on DK. Lineup builder hating it. Let me look at it.
I
like him on FanDuel today at no ownership. So
I don't remember getting to him on DraftKings. I'm going to look through my lineups.
He's 1% owned, and I think that he should be like 10% owned. I would happily get a little bit more if he's unowned. I like that in a large field GPP. He's not a cash play or anything like that.
Yeah, 5,400 is a little steep for Richardson with everybody back. But yeah, if you're playing multiple lineups and do you go over or underweight the 1%, then I think it's okay to say over 1. But I mean, I played 20 lineups on DraftKings and he's not in any of them.
Yeah, and I think that is very reasonable. Like he's 4% owned on FanDuel at 5,100. I have 16. He's one of the biggest, gets the biggest benefit from Mikal Bridges. What groups do you have for the Knicks? I don't have any.
None.
Middleton, no site given. I can't answer that one. As I'm walking through the grocery store and Nickelback is playing, also while Josh serenades us with Nickelback is all of the things. That's incredible.
Which did you prefer? Did you prefer Josh singing it or Nickelback singing it?
I think everybody knows that it's me.
I think a lot of people would actually agree with you.
Jake Nunley with the super chat, and I think this is a big one. SuperDraft guys, plug your ears for a second. Thanks for all the free no house advantage advice. Been killing it. I'm at 50x in 3 weeks. Appreciate all the hard work you guys are putting in. It's always great to hear that you guys are making some money off of the stuff that we can help you or that we can provide to help you do so. Whether that is SuperDraft, who is the presenting sponsor, where you should go play and use that promo code Awesemo21 when signing up for a free deposit. Whether that's No House Advantage, we're just happy that you guys are making money. That's all. Wiseman or Len in a FanDuel GPP? You know my answer.
So I have actually really similar ownership between the two of them now, but I have a couple more lineups with Wiseman. It's, what somebody asked in the Slack chat earlier while we were talking about Alex Len that I do think Bears was talking about is somebody said, is Davis Bertans coming back going to affect Alex Len? Potentially. I don't think he plays 33 minutes again. And one of the reasons he wouldn't get to those minutes is because Bertans plays center minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. There it is. Middleton, Wiseman. By the way, I have like 11% Wiseman, so I'm with the field. Middleton, Wiseman, or Jakob Poeltl, Keldon Johnson on FanDuel.
Middleton, Wiseman, Middleton and Wiseman.
Yeah, I agree. I prefer Wiseman to Jakob Poeltl, and then I have to obviously prefer Middleton to Keldon Johnson.
Yeah, that it's really just because I for this slate, I don't think Keldon Johnson's a great play considering his ownership.
DeLon Wright or Derek White in FanDuel cash?
But
probably neither.
We didn't really talk about DeLon Wright, though. I have exposure to DeLon Wright in GPPs a decent amount.
You can't be taking him ahead of Drew Holiday, though.
No. Drew Holiday, way stronger. But I prefer DeLon Wright to Derek White.
Yeah, I prefer DeLon Wright by a lot. And then if I needed like that area, I'm playing Drew Holiday and Chris Paul before I'm playing either one of the two guys in the question.
Agreed, especially considering the ownership.
Yeah, Drew Holiday to me is a lock cash game play on FanDuel, unless you've saved so much money that it's opening you up to go to like Luka and De'Aaron Fox or something. Unless you're paying into the elite tier, those guys are going to be more cost efficient on a per dollar basis. Favorite center on FanDuel? I can't lead you guys down this, man.
You gonna tell them Alex Len again?
My answer is Alex Len. I am going to be playing Alex Len. He's 3,600, so I feel like it's going to be okay if that doesn't go well. He's in 30% of my lineups right now. That's still 70% more to go. But he showed up in the optimal in my Sims 13% of the time. Center's tough today. There's options up and down the list of salary that are all relatively efficient next to their dollar amount. So I am going crazy on Len. That's mostly a public ownership decision, not necessarily something that's coming out of my data personally.
Well, I am a decent amount overweight to the field on Alex Len now, but that's because, like I said before, but I don't have nearly as much as Josh did. But at least in terms of the one I have the most exposure to, it's Montrezl Harrell for me.
Okay. Wow, we're getting a ton of questions. 4 minutes to go. Make sure you guys have your lineups in. I'm making sure that I do, and
as am I.
Pretty sure that I do. We're just going to have to go.
And it's funny because the update that I'm making now is to go from having minimal, from having none to Alex Len to at least having minimal. Because if Alex Len has a big game and you kind of sold me on him, and I didn't make these changes now, then I'd be banging my head against the wall all night.
What I'm expecting is that you're going to make these changes and he's going to be 12% owned on FanDuel, and it's going to change the entire equation. Because if you were 12% owned right now, I would not have 30.
Yeah, I have a feeling that his ownership is probably going to be a little higher than what's projected as.
I manually changed it to 7 to try to account for it at least a little bit. Otherwise, if it were at 1.5 or whatever it was the last time, I'd have like 50. And I don't think that is what I'm supposed to be doing here. Let's just we got 3 minutes to go. Most exposed players for you today.
All right. So on both sites, on the high end, it's Giannis. Okay. Come on, upload. And then I could really get the right answers here. All right.
Well, I could talk until you're uploaded.
Yep, I'm uploaded now. Okay, all right, cool. There we go. All right, so starting with DraftKings, Giannis is the player I have the most exposure to. I don't really have that many guys that, at least relative to other slates, that I feel massively confident in. But Giannis, DeLon Wright, Alec Burks, Derek White, Rodney Magruder, Montrezl Harrell on DraftKings, FanDuel. Let's go position by position on FanDuel and compare. Those are my guys on DraftKings. And DraftKings is a little more just easy to say those are my highest because the position doesn't matter as much.
Give me your top two at point guard.
At point guard for me, it is Drew Holiday and Luka Doncic. Drew, the only one that I'm like massively overweight to, though.
I'm going to already amend my answer. So it's Luka Doncic, it's Drew Holiday at the top. And then I have Luka, Chris Paul, De'Aaron Fox, Jamal Murray, and Dennis Schroeder all at 18 to 20%. Doesn't seem right to just pick one of those guys because that could all just be randomness, basically. So Drew is on his own tier. The rest of those guys are all pretty comparable.
Yeah, I have a whole bunch of guys around 20% on FanDuel.
Yeah, shooting guard. Obviously, it's Karis LeVert at the top. I'm assuming it's still Quickly too.
Yeah, so Quickly's in a third of my lineups, but still, so LeVert's in 98% of my lineups. Then I have Quickly in a third of them. So there's just only so much ownership left after that. So I have like Booker and Paul George in the teens, and then I have lesser ownership to Josh Jackson, Alec Burks, but it's LeVert and Quickly by a long shot.
Putting this out there to the public on FanDuel, I have it at a 12% chance that Karis LeVert and Emmanuel Quickly are the optimal shooting guard pair today. Small forward. For me, I've got LeBron James at the top, RJ Barrett second, but I got a ton of dudes around 15% too.
Middleton, Barrett, and Bridges for me.
Well, that's how we'll figure out who wins the monies tonight. Small forward. Power forward for me is Giannis, and flip a coin between Jeremy Grant and Draymond.
Giannis, Jeremy Grant, and then Kyle Kuzma.
There we go. So it's Draymond versus Kuz tonight in our little battle. And then at center, Alex Len at the top of the heap, Nikola Jokic second.
Yeah, Harrell, Jokic, and then it's just a whole bunch of guys who are like 8 to 10%. Cody Zeller, James Wiseman, Jakob Poeltl, Valanciunas, Alex Len, just Rashawn Holmes. It's just a bunch of guys in the mix after that.
And we are locked. Hitting it on the number. Good stuff. That was one of the faster hours of my life. Greg, any final thoughts before we get out of here? Don't forget, we've got another show coming up 9:30 Eastern tonight. Spags and Emac.
No, just follow me on Twitter at Ehrenherg DFS. And thanks to my brother who went and picked me up Chinese food while we're doing the show.
Ooh, nice. Wife's got a pork tenderloin in the sous vide bath right now. So I'm going to go eat some pork tenderloin. I'm going to watch some basketball, and then I'm going to win $100,000. It'll be pretty fun.
Wow, very confident. All right, I'll come in second then.
That's fine. You could have that 40 G's, man. On that note, we are out of here. Thank you to SuperDraft for being the presenting sponsor. Hit the like button on your way out of the door. And that's it, everybody. Good luck tonight. Go watch Live Before Lock later tonight, and then come join me tomorrow, 6:30 a.m. on The Process Show. Peace. All right, how owned is Len?